Have you ever felt like ancient civilizations knew something we've forgotten? Secrets of energy, time, and transformation that could change your life today? From hidden rituals to forbidden wisdom, the mysteries of the past still whisper to us, waiting to be uncovered. And in this journey, you're going to discover truths that can awaken your mind and transform your reality. If you're ready to step into that world of forgotten power, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments, because together, we're bringing these lost teachings back to life.
Breath of fire, ancient breathing for instant energy. There is a forgotten secret that ancient warriors, monks, and mystics carried with them for centuries. A technique so simple that it requires nothing more than your own breath, yet so powerful that it can transform your body and mind within moments. This technique is known as the breath of fire. Unlike ordinary breathing, which is slow, unconscious, and often shallow, breath of fire is rapid, rhythmic, and deliberate. It is not just breathing. It is a practice that ignites inner energy, clears mental fog, and awakens a deep reservoir of vitality that most people never even realize they have within themselves. At its core, breath of fire involves quick, powerful exhalations through the nose, driven by the force of the diaphragm and lower abdomen. Each exhale is sharp and intentional, while each inhale happens almost automatically as the body naturally draws in air. This rhythm, fast, consistent, and repetitive, creates an internal fire, an energetic heat that spreads through the body and awakens dormant strength. Imagine your diaphragm acting like a blacksmith's bellow, pumping oxygen rapidly into your bloodstream. Within moments, your brain lights up, your thoughts become sharper, and your sluggishness disappears as if a fog has been lifted. The physical effects are extraordinary. The rapid cycle of inhalations and exhalations oxygenates the blood at an accelerated rate, clearing toxins and excess carbon dioxide from the body. This process doesn't just energize you, it detoxifies you. Practitioners often describe an immediate rush of alertness, a sense of clarity that cuts through exhaustion, and an almost electric awareness flowing through their body. For this reason, breath of fire was treasured by ancient warriors preparing for battle, yogis seeking higher states of consciousness, and sages who needed resilience and mental endurance during long periods of meditation. To practice breath of fire, one must sit upright with the spine straight and the shoulders relaxed. The eyes may be closed to sharpen internal focus. Breathing begins slowly, about 1 cycle per second, before gradually increasing to 2 or even 3 breaths per second as the body adapts. For beginners, 30 seconds to a minute is sufficient, but with practice, the duration can be extended, bringing deeper results. Each sharp exhale engages the core, strengthening the abdominal muscles, lungs, and nervous system. Over time, the body becomes more resilient to stress, and the mind learns to remain calm even in chaos. But the true power of breath of fire goes beyond the physical body. Ancient masters believed that this breathing awakened subtle energies within, the dormant creative force, the hidden vitality, and the spiritual spark that connects human consciousness with something greater. They saw it as a bridge between the material and the divine, between discipline and flow. It was said that breath of fire could expand awareness, unlock creativity, and align one's inner vibration with the rhythm of life itself. Modern science now confirms many of these claims. Studies show that breath of fire reduces cortisol, the primary stress hormone, while simultaneously boosting cardiovascular health and improving brain function. It enhances memory, strengthens focus, and even stabilizes emotional responses. For those who constantly feel fatigued, overwhelmed, or distracted, this ancient practice serves as a reset button, a way to return to balance, strength, and clarity within just minutes. Many who make it a daily habit describe an almost invincible state of being. They no longer move through their days drained and distracted, but energized, centered, and mentally sharp. Breath of fire does not only train the lungs or clear the mind, it awakens something much deeper. It reveals the hidden reservoir of energy that lies quietly within every human being, waiting to be unlocked.
This is why the technique was once guarded, taught only to the worthy, warriors before battle, monks in initiation, and mystics in training. They knew that to master the breath was to master energy, and to master energy was to master life itself. In a world today filled with stress, exhaustion, and endless distractions, Breath of Fire is not just a practice from the past. It is a survival tool, a method for reclaiming inner power in a time when most people have forgotten how to breathe with purpose. Memory Palace technique for superhuman recall. There is a reason why some of the greatest minds in history, Greek philosophers, Roman orators, and medieval scholars, were able to memorize entire books, recall speeches word for word, and carry vast amounts of knowledge in their minds without ever writing it down. They did not have smartphones, search engines, or endless libraries at their disposal, yet their memory seemed superhuman. Their secret was a method both simple and profound, a method that taps into the way the human brain is naturally wired to remember. This method is called the Memory Palace. The Memory Palace, also known as the method of Lochi, is based on one truth about the mind. Humans are far better at remembering places than they are at remembering abstract information. Think about it. You may forget a phone number you heard yesterday, but you never forget the layout of your childhood home. You might struggle to recall a list of random words, but you will instantly remember the details of your favorite cafe, the smell, the sound, the furniture, the corner where you always sit. Our brains are built to remember locations and images because for our ancestors, survival depended on it. They had to remember where food grew, where danger lurked, and where water could be found. The Memory Palace uses this natural strength and transforms it into a powerful tool for learning. The method is elegant. You begin with a familiar location, a place you know so well that you can walk through it in your mind without effort. It could be your house, a street you walk daily, or even a school you once attended. Then, instead of trying to remember abstract information directly, you place that information inside your chosen space in the form of vivid, exaggerated, and emotional images. For example, if you want to remember the word apple, you don't simply repeat it to yourself. You imagine a giant golden apple crashing through your front door, so large that it breaks the walls as it rolls inside. The more unusual and dramatic the image, the stronger the memory becomes. Once the information is placed, recalling it is simple. You walk through your palace in your imagination, step by step, and collect the images you left there. Each room, each corner, each object acts as a hook for memory. This is why ancient orators like Cicero could deliver hours-long speeches without notes. They simply walked through their memory palace in their mind, collecting each argument and phrase as if retrieving treasures hidden in the halls of their imagination. The beauty of this technique is not only its power, but also its adaptability. A memory palace can be built for anything: languages, numbers, formulas, historical dates, even entire books. Modern memory champions still use it today to memorize thousands of digits of pi, decks of shuffled cards, and massive amounts of data in record time. It is not just an ancient trick, it remains one of the most effective methods known for mental mastery. But the benefits go deeper than just memorization. Practicing the Memory Palace strengthens the brain itself. It sharpens visualization skills, improves pattern recognition, and enhances creativity. Because you are not simply memorizing but actively constructing a vivid inner world, the process lights up multiple areas of the brain, weaving knowledge into memory far more efficiently than repetition alone. This is why those who master the technique often find that their overall intelligence and problem-solving abilities increase. Think about how revolutionary this is in today's world. We live in an age where most people rely entirely on external devices, phones, computers, and cloud storage, to remember things for them. Our natural memory has grown weak because we rarely train it. Yet hidden within us is this ancient method that can restore superhuman recall, proving that the mind is capable of much more than we give it credit for. To begin using this method, you don't need to be a philosopher or a scholar. Start small. Choose a room you know well. Place a few vivid images inside that represent the information you want to remember. Walk through the room in your mind, collecting them. With practice, you will soon be able to build vast palaces, entire mental landscapes filled with knowledge. Over time, your mind becomes a library greater than any external tool. The ancients saw the memory palace as more than a technique. They saw it as a form of mental magic, a way to turn the invisible into the unforgettable, the abstract into the concrete. They understood that knowledge, when bound to imagination, becomes unshakable. To them, mastering the memory palace was not simply about storing facts, it was about unlocking the full potential of the human mind. And that is why it is remembered not as a curiosity of history, but as a timeless key to superhuman memory that still waits to be used today. Mudras. Hand gestures to unlock hidden energies. Across the world's oldest traditions, from the mountains of India to the monasteries of Tibet, there is a secret that requires no tools, no words, and no external rituals, only the positioning of your own hands. This secret is the practice of mudras. At first glance, mudras may look like simple hand gestures or symbolic poses, but to ancient mystics, yogis, and healers, they were far more than that. They were keys to energy flow, switches that could influence the body, the mind, and even consciousness itself. Every finger in your hand represents an element: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. When you bring your fingers together in certain patterns, you are not just moving your hands, you are creating an energetic circuit, directing the life force energy known as prana to flow in a particular way. The ancients discovered that the human body is not just flesh and bone, it is an energy system, and the hands act as one of the main control centers of that system. By practicing mudras, they learn to alter mental states, strengthen the body, calm emotions, and even accelerate healing. For example, the Gyan mudra, where the tip of the index finger touches the thumb, was believed to unlock wisdom and concentration. Students, monks, and meditators used it to sharpen their minds and still their restless thoughts. The prana mudra, where the ring finger and little finger touch the thumb, was said to awaken dormant energy and boost vitality, like turning on an inner current that had been sleeping. The Anjali mudra, with both palms pressed together in prayer, balanced the left and right hemispheres of the brain, bringing a deep sense of harmony, gratitude, and inner peace. These gestures, though small, carried power far greater than their appearance suggested. Modern science now supports what ancient traditions already knew. Different Haras and positions stimulate specific neural pathways in the brain, altering mood, focus, and physiological responses. Some mudras lower blood pressure and heart rate, bringing calmness. Others increase oxygen flow and awaken focus. Repeated practice can even train the nervous system, creating long-term shifts in mental clarity and emotional balance. What once looked like mystical superstition is now being revealed as a precise mind-body technique. The beauty of mudras lies in their simplicity. You don't need a temple, special equipment, or even a quiet place. You can use them anywhere, sitting at a desk, waiting in line, or meditating at home. A single gesture of the hand can redirect your inner energy in moments. The ancients knew this. That's why mudras were often kept hidden, taught only to serious practitioners. They understood that the hands, when used with intention, were not just tools of the body, but instruments of the soul. To the untrained eye, mudras might look like harmless movements, but for those who practice them with awareness, they become gateways. They are ways of programming the subconscious mind, of channeling energy where it needs to flow. Just as a clenched fist signals aggression and open palms signal peace, mudras go deeper, reshaping inner states at the energetic level. In today's world, filled with constant stress and external distractions, mudras are a forgotten treasure. They remind us that we don't always need something outside ourselves to restore balance. The power is literally in our own hands. By learning these gestures, you can awaken hidden reserves of focus, resilience, and healing energy. The ancients held mudras in such high regard because they understood this truth. The body is the gateway to the mind, and the mind is the gateway to the spirit. By shaping the body, even with something as simple as a hand gesture, you shape the flow of energy. And by shaping energy, you shape reality itself. Mudras are more than postures. They are keys, unlocking hidden doors within us that lead to strength, peace, and transformation. Hara principle, samurai secret for inner strength. For centuries, the samurai of Japan were feared and respected not only for their mastery of the sword, but for something far greater, their unshakable presence. In the face of death, they stood calm. In moments of chaos, their movements were precise and fluid. What gave them this unbreakable inner strength was not brute force, but a principle deeply rooted in their culture. The Hara. The word Hara refers to the lower abdomen, just below the navel. In Japanese philosophy, this region was not seen merely as a part of the body, but as the true center of gravity, the place where life energy, balance, and stability originate. To the samurai, living from the Hara meant living from their center, physically, mentally, and spiritually. It was not enough to sharpen their swords. They had to sharpen their presence. A warrior disconnected from his Hara would falter, hesitate, and lose. But a warrior anchored in it was immovable, calm, and decisive, no matter how fierce the battle. Western cultures often place intelligence and strength in the mind or the muscles, but the Japanese saw it differently. They understood that real power does not come from the head alone, nor from physical strength, but from being rooted in the body's center. The Hara was the source of confidence, clarity, and willpower. To train it meant to train the very core of existence. This is why samurai practice was not only about swordsmanship, it included meditation, breathing, calligraphy, tea ceremonies, and posture training, all designed to cultivate Hara. The secret of Hara was especially important in combat. A samurai who moved from his center was harder to throw off balance, both physically and emotionally. His strikes carried more force because they originated from the body's core, not from the arms alone. His decisions were quicker because his mind was anchored in stillness rather than scattered thoughts. Even his presence on the battlefield became intimidating. He radiated stability and fearlessness, making enemies feel his strength before he even moved. Cultivating Hara begins with breath. Unlike shallow chest breathing, which signals stress and weakens the body, deep abdominal breathing draws energy into the lower belly, creating a stable core. Each inhale fills the Hara with life force, and each exhale releases tension. Over time, this way of breathing rewires the nervous system, allowing a person to remain calm under pressure. Even modern science now confirms that deep abdominal breathing reduces stress hormones, improves focus, and increases endurance. What the samurai knew intuitively is now being measured in labs across the world. But Hara was not just for the battlefield. It shaped the way samurai lived their daily lives. In tea ceremonies, their movements were slow and deliberate, showing calmness. In calligraphy, their brushstrokes flowed naturally, guided by the steadiness of their center. In meditation, they sat deeply rooted, their presence unshakable. Hara was not a technique they turned on in moments of crisis. It was a way of life, a constant awareness of living from their center. To this day, in Japan, a person with strong Hara is seen as trustworthy, grounded, and dependable, while someone without it is seen as nervous, weak, and easily swayed. The principle is timeless. It is as relevant in the modern world as it was on the battlefield. A business leader, an athlete, or even a parent can benefit from living with Hara, making decisions from a place of stability, speaking with authority, and moving through life with calm strength. The truth is, most people today are disconnected from their Hara. They live in their heads, overwhelmed by thoughts, or in their emotions, easily shaken by stress. They are like trees with shallow roots, quick to bend or break in the storm. The samurai remind us that true inner strength comes from going deeper, rooting ourselves in the center of the body, anchoring our breath, and moving from the core. Hara is the quiet power that does not shout,
the strength that does not waver, and the calmness that does not break. To master it is to carry within you a center that nothing in the outside world can disturb. That was the samurai secret. That is the meaning of unshakable inner strength. Hermetic principle of mentalism, mastering reality. Hidden within the teachings of the ancient mystery schools lies a principle so profound that those who understood it were said to wield the very keys of creation. This principle was passed down through Hermetic philosophy, a body of wisdom attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary sage who blended Egyptian and Greek knowledge. At the heart of this philosophy lies the principle of mentalism, the idea that all is mind. The universe is mental. To the uninitiated, these words may sound abstract or mystical, but for those who grasp them fully, they reveal nothing less than the blueprint of reality itself. The principle of mentalism teaches that the external world we experience is not separate from us. It is shaped, filtered, and influenced by the mind. Every thought, every belief, every mental image acts like a seed planted in the fertile soil of consciousness. Over time, these seeds take root, shaping circumstances, events, and even our perception of what is possible. Ancient initiates understood that if you mastered your mind, you could master your reality. Conversely, if your mind was chaotic, fearful, and undisciplined, then your reality would reflect that same chaos. To the Hermetic masters, reality was not a rigid, unchangeable structure. It was fluid, vibrational, and malleable, like clay waiting to be molded. Thoughts were not passive. They were forces, carrying weight and influence. Beliefs were not just private opinions. They were lenses that bent reality itself. This is why philosophers, mystics, and spiritual leaders across history emphasized self-mastery. They knew that the true battlefield of life was not outside, but inside the mind. Consider this. When you believe in your own ability to succeed, you begin to notice opportunities that others overlook. When you dwell in fear or failure, your mind unconscious. Owsley creates barriers that confirm those beliefs. This is not just mystical language. Modern neuroscience now confirms that repeated thought patterns physically reshape the brain, a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. The Hermetic masters discovered this truth thousands of years before science caught up. They understood that mental focus is not imagination alone, but a force that carves new pathways in the mind and new possibilities in reality. To apply the principle of mentalism is to recognize that the mind is the starting point of all creation. If you want to change your life, you must first change your inner world. This is why Hermetic training involved rigorous exercises of visualization, meditation, and inner discipline. Initiates were taught to control their thoughts the way a sculptor controls his hands, carefully, deliberately, with awareness of every movement. Just as a sculptor shapes clay into a masterpiece, the adept shapes his mind into a vessel capable of manifesting harmony, clarity, and purpose in the world. But this principle goes beyond personal success. It reveals the deeper truth that the universe itself is mental. Everything that exists, the stars, the planets, the laws of physics, and even the human soul, emerges from a universal mind. We are not separate observers, but active participants within this grand consciousness. To understand this is to realize that we are not powerless beings trapped in a mechanical universe. We are co-creators, shaping reality through the power of thought, belief, and focus. The challenge, of course, is discipline. Most people do not master their minds master them. Their thoughts run wild, driven by fear, doubt, and external influence. They wake each day reacting to circumstances, never realizing that their inner state is the very thing creating those circumstances. The Hermetic masters warned that an undisciplined mind is like a garden left untended. It will not remain empty, but will grow weeds, choking out clarity and purpose. Only those who take conscious control of their thoughts can plant seeds of order, beauty, and growth. Imagine the potential
If this principle were applied daily, instead of dwelling on what could go wrong, you dwell on what you wish to create. Instead of replaying old failures in your mind, you rehearse success, peace, and strength. Instead of letting fear dominate your thoughts, you replace it with images of courage and clarity. Slowly but surely, reality begins to shift, because your perception shifts, and perception is the lens through which reality is shaped. The Hermetic masters lived by this truth, and it gave them an almost supernatural aura of influence. They seemed untouchable not because of magic tricks, but because they had mastered the root of all power, the mind. They knew that the outer world is always a reflection of the inner one. Change the cause, and the effect must follow. Even today, this principle is the foundation behind visualization techniques, affirmations, and manifestation practices. Athletes use it to rehearse victory in their minds before stepping onto the field. Leaders use it to envision success before making bold decisions. Psychologists use it to help people overcome trauma by reshaping the stories they tell themselves. What once seemed like mystical philosophy is now recognized as practical psychology and neuroscience. But the ancients would remind us that it is not or to understand the principle intellectually, you must live it. Mentalism requires daily practice. It requires vigilance over your thoughts, the courage to reject destructive beliefs, and the discipline to focus your mind on what you truly wish to bring into being. It is not about wishful daydreaming. It is about conscious mental control, an unshakable focus that bends reality itself. The Hermetic principle of mentalism reveals a truth both humbling and empowering. Your mind is not just a passenger in reality, it is the architect of it. Every thought is a brushstroke painting the canvas of your life. Every belief is a foundation shaping the structure of your destiny. And every moment you choose to master your mind, you reclaim the power to master your world. Egyptian sleep temples for deep healing. In the heart of ancient Egypt, hidden within sacred sanctuaries dedicated to the gods, there existed one of the most mysterious healing traditions ever recorded, the practice of the sleep temples. These were not ordinary places of rest. They were powerful centers of transformation, where the body and spirit were renewed, and where individuals sought visions, healing, and divine guidance. To the ancient Egyptians, sleep was not merely a state of rest. It was a sacred gateway, a passage into realms of wisdom and power that were inaccessible during waking life. The sleep temples were highly revered, often attached to great sanctuaries dedicated to gods such as Imhotep, the divine physician, or Serapis, associated with healing and rebirth. People who entered these temples did not come just to sleep. They came to undergo a spiritual treatment, a ritual carefully guided by priests who understood the mysteries of the mind, the body, and the soul. Before being allowed into the sacred chamber, seekers had to go through purification. They bathed in holy waters, fasted, and recited prayers or chants designed to align their vibration with the higher realms. This cleansing was essential, for only a purified body and mind could enter the temple's dream world and receive true healing. Inside the temple, the atmosphere itself was designed to alter consciousness. Incense, such as frankincense and myrrh, filled the air, purifying the spirit and calming the nervous system. Soft chanting and rhythmic sounds created a hypnotic environment, slowly guiding the seeker into a trance-like state between waking and dreaming. It was in this state, known today as hypnagogia, that the Egyptians believed the gods could communicate directly with humans. Here, the conscious mind loosened its grip, and the subconscious opened like a door. In this sacred dream state, the priests acted as guides. They would sometimes whisper invocations or recite incantations to encourage visions, healing dreams, and divine messages. The seeker would often dream of symbolic images, animals, light, landscapes, or mythic beings, and upon waking, these visions were interpreted by the temple priests. The Egyptians believed that dreams carried answers to life's deepest dilemmas, revealed the root causes of illness, and sometimes even offered cures directly from the divine. The healing was not only spiritual, but also physical. Ancient records describe people entering these temples sick, weak, or tormented by mental suffering, and leaving renewed in both body and soul. Modern science may call this the power of suggestion or the healing capacity of the subconscious mind, but to the Egyptians, it was divine intervention, a sacred alignment between the human and the divine through the portal of sleep. The most famous of these sanctuaries was dedicated to Imhotep, a legendary physician who became deified as the god of medicine. People traveled from far and wide to sleep in his temple, seeking miraculous cures. Stories spread of individuals who awoke, healed of illnesses that had plagued them for years, their health restored through visions in the dream state. For the Egyptians, this was proof that true healing required more than herbs or remedies. It required harmony between the body, the mind, and the soul. Today, fragments of this knowledge live on in practices like dream incubation, hypnosis, and guided visualization. Psychologists now confirm that the subconscious mind plays a massive role in both health and behavior. During deep sleep and dreaming, the brain processes emotions, repairs the body, strengthens the immune system, and integrates experiences. What modern research is only beginning to prove, the ancient Egyptians already understood and practiced with precision thousands of years ago. The wisdom of the sleep temples challenges the modern way of thinking about healing. Instead of treating symptoms alone, it points us inward, towards the hidden intelligence of the mind and the spirit. It suggests that within our dreams lie the answers we seek, that the subconscious holds keys to health, creativity, and spiritual awakening. It reminds us that sleep is not just rest, it is a bridge between worlds, a hidden dimension of healing that most people today overlook. To practice this wisdom in modern life, one can begin with intention. Before sleep, set a clear question or request for healing. Enter rest as though it were a sacred ritual, allowing the subconscious to reveal insights through dreams. By approaching sleep not as an escape but as a doorway, we revive a fragment of the ancient practice of the Egyptian temples. The ancients knew that healing required more than medicine. It required alignment, intention, and connection to the divine through the dream world. The sleep temples of Egypt remind us that the greatest medicine may already lie within us, waiting to be awakened in the silence of the night. Persian Tarof. Influence through politeness. In the culture of ancient Persia, and even in modern Iran, there exists a social art so subtle, so layered, that outsiders often find it puzzling or even deceptive. This practice is called Tarof, and at first glance it appears to be nothing more than politeness. But beneath the surface, it is a sophisticated psychological dance of honor, humility, and influence. Tarof is not simply about good manners. It is a deeply ingrained way of navigating power, relationships, and social bonds. At its core, Tarof is the practice of offering something, hospitality, gifts, service, or even payment, without expecting the other person to accept it on the first try. For example, when entering an Iranian household, the host might insist repeatedly, "Please, eat more, take more, stay longer." The guest, in turn, is expected to politely decline several times before finally accepting. Neither side is lying. Both are performing a ritual of respect. It is a way of saying, "You are valued, your presence is honored, and I place your dignity above my own convenience." But Tarof is more than kindness. It is strategy. In Persian culture, where pride and reputation hold great importance, Tarof allows people to express humility without losing face, and generosity without seeming arrogant. It creates a balance of honor. To refuse too quickly may appear rude, as though you did not value the offer. To accept too quickly may seem greedy or self-centered. The beauty of Tarof lies in the tension it creates, a respectful tug-of-war where both sides express deference before settling into a genuine agreement. On the surface, Tarof appears to be about politeness, but at a deeper level, it can be a powerful tool of influence. By mastering Tarof, one can guide relationships, diffuse conflicts, and even gain subtle control over negotiations. Imagine a merchant who offers a customer something with exaggerated humility.
insisting it is too much trouble or not worth paying for. The customer, caught in the web of Tarof, feels compelled to pay generously or accept the service, not wanting to appear dishonorable. In this way, Tarof shapes decisions without force. It works through pride, respect, and the unspoken rules of honor. What makes Tarof fascinating is that it blurs the line between sincerity and performance. Both parties know they are playing a game, yet the ritual is respected as if it were sacred. It creates a world where gestures matter more than words, where refusing an offer 3 times before accepting is not hypocrisy, but harmony. Outsiders often misinterpret this as dishonesty, but within Persian society it is seen as refinement, a sign of cultural intelligence and social grace. Even in modern times, Tarof governs daily life in Iran. It can be seen in the smallest interactions, from offering a taxi fare to refusing payment at a shop. It can also rise to moments of high importance, such as business negotiations or political meetings, where each side uses layers of Tarof to signal respect, strength, or humility. Those who understand the game can navigate it skillfully, gaining influence without aggression. Those who misunderstand it may feel manipulated or left out of the deeper meaning. Psychologically, Tarof reveals a truth about human nature. Influence does not always come from direct power. It often comes from subtlety, from making others feel honored, respected, and valued. People are more likely to agree, cooperate, or yield when their dignity is preserved. The Persians elevated this understanding into an art form, proving that politeness itself can be a weapon sharper than a sword. To outsiders, Tarof may seem unnecessary or overly complicated, but within Persian society, it has endured for centuries because it strengthens social bonds. It ensures that generosity, humility, and honor remain central to daily life. It turns ordinary exchanges into rituals of respect, where the act of giving and receiving becomes a dance of dignity. The lesson of Tarof is timeless. Words and gestures carry power beyond their surface meaning. Influence is not always about domination, it is often about respect. By mastering the art of humility and politeness, one can shape outcomes, protect honor, and build relationships that endure. The Persians knew this well, which is why Tarof remains not just a tradition, but a living philosophy of social intelligence. Stoic Premeditatio Malorum for crisis readiness. Life is unpredictable. Storms come without warning. Disasters strike when least expected. And even the strongest among us can be shaken when reality takes a sudden turn. Yet more than 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome and Greece discovered a way to prepare the mind for chaos before it even arrived. This practice was called Premeditatio Malorum, or the premeditation of evils, and it was the secret weapon of the Stoics for remaining unshaken in the face of crisis. The principle is simple, yet powerful. Instead of avoiding thoughts of misfortune, you deliberately imagine them. You picture losses, failures, betrayals, even death itself. But you do not do this to make yourself fearful. You do it to make yourself strong. By facing hardship in the mind before it happens in reality, you train yourself not to be destroyed by it. The Stoics understood that most suffering does not come from events themselves, but from being caught off guard by them. If you expect life to always be smooth, every difficulty feels unbearable. But if you prepare your mind for storms, no storm can fully break you. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome, practiced this daily. In his private writings, he reminded himself that he would encounter selfish people, angry people, liars, and betrayers. By acknowledging this ahead of time, he could face them without surprise, anger, or bitterness. Seneca, another great Stoic, advised imagining the loss of wealth, exile, or even death itself. To him, rehearsing these possibilities did not create weakness, it created freedom. Because once you accept that misfortune can come, you stop fearing it. And when fear disappears, strength takes its place. The practice works because it builds psychological armor. Consider this. When a soldier trains for battle, he does not only practice in safe conditions. He trains under stress, in mud, in noise, in exhaustion, because he knows the battlefield will not be kind. In the same way, Premeditatio Malorum trains the mind to endure discomfort and uncertainty before it arrives. You might imagine losing your job, being humiliated, or facing financial hardship. At first it feels unpleasant, but then you realize you would still survive. You would adapt. You would find a way through. Suddenly the fear that once controlled you begins to lose its power. Modern psychology confirms the wisdom of this practice. Athletes use a similar technique called stress inoculation, where they mentally rehearse worst-case scenarios so that if mistakes or setbacks occur, they remain calm. Cognitive behavioral therapy also uses visualization of feared outcomes to reduce anxiety. The Stoics, centuries earlier, were already practicing this mental resilience. They knew that the mind, when exposed to fear in controlled doses, grows stronger, just as the body grows stronger through training. But the Stoics were not pessimists. They did not dwell on misery for its own sake. Their purpose was freedom. They believed that by imagining the worst, you could then appreciate the best more deeply. If you meditate on losing your loved ones, for example, you cherish them more while they are alive. If you picture poverty, you value the wealth and comfort you currently have. In this way, Premeditatio Malorum is not only a tool for resilience, it is a tool for gratitude. It awakens you to the fragility of life and teaches you to embrace every moment with presence. The practice is simple to apply. At the start of the day, take a quiet moment to reflect. What obstacles might I face today? What could go wrong? What would happen if I lost what I now take for granted? Imagine these vividly, not to dwell in fear, but to prepare. Then remind yourself that even if these things occur, you will still have the power of choice, the power of endurance, and the power to respond with dignity. The Stoics remind us of a timeless truth. Crisis is inevitable, but panic is optional. Pain may come, but despair is not required. By rehearsing life's difficulties before they arrive, you take away their ability to catch you unprepared. You cannot control the storms of life, but you can control how firmly you stand when they arrive. Premeditatio Malorum is more than philosophy. It is a discipline of the mind, a way to become unshakable in a world that is always uncertain. It does not make life easier, but it makes you stronger. And sometimes strength is all you need to endure, to persist, and to emerge from the storm with courage intact. Tibetan Tummo, breathing for inner fire. High in the frozen mountains of Tibet, where icy winds cut through the air and snow blankets the earth in silence, there exists a practice so extraordinary that it defies belief. Monks wrapped only in thin robes would sit in the dead of winter, surrounded by ice, and yet their bodies radiated heat so intense that the snow around them would melt. This was no legend. It was the result of a powerful ancient technique known as Tummo breathing, or the practice of awakening the inner fire. At its core, Tummo is not simply a breathing exercise. It is a way of unlocking the hidden reserves of energy that lie dormant within every human being. The Tibetan monks believed that within the body flows a subtle energy system, invisible to the naked eye, yet deeply influential on both body and mind. Through Tummo, they learned to ignite this energy, channeling it into warmth, strength, and even spiritual awakening. The practice combines intense visualization with controlled breathing. Practitioners inhale deeply, pulling air into the lower belly, and exhale in a slow, rhythmic pattern while visualizing flames burning brightly in the navel region. With each cycle of breath, they imagine the fire growing stronger, spreading warmth throughout the body, burning away fear, weakness, and distraction. Over time, the body responds to the mind's command, raising temperature, increasing energy, and producing an almost supernatural resilience to cold.
Science has now studied Tummo and confirmed its power. Researchers observed Tibetan monks raising their body temperature significantly during meditation, enough to dry wet sheets placed on their skin in freezing environments. This ability is not a trick. It is a demonstration of how the mind, through breath and focus, can directly influence the body's physiology. Modern practitioners of similar methods, like these a Wim Hof breathing technique, have shown that humans can indeed control parts of the nervous system once thought automatic. The ancients already knew this, and Tummo was their path to mastery. But the benefits of Tummo go beyond surviving the cold. The practice awakens deep reserves of life force energy, bringing mental clarity, emotional balance, and spiritual strength. Tibetan monks saw it as a way of burning away illusions, fears, and attachments. The inner fire was not only physical heat, but also the flame of spiritual transformation. To them, Tummo was a sacred path to enlightenment, a way of merging body, breath, and spirit into one powerful current of energy. For ordinary people, the lessons of Tummo remain profound. We may not need to sit in snowbanks or endure freezing winds, but we all face moments of coldness in life, the cold of fear, of despair, of exhaustion. Tummo reminds us that within each of us lies a hidden fire, a power that can be awakened through discipline, breath, and focus. By learning to control our inner world, we gain the strength to face the outer one. Practicing Tummo requires dedication. Beginners often start with simple breathwork, deep belly breathing, slow exhalations, and visualization of warmth. Over time, this builds not only heat, but also resilience. The nervous system adapts, stress decreases, and the body learns to remain calm under pressure. What seems mystical becomes practical. The ability to command energy, to resist the elements, and to find strength when others collapse. The Tibetans preserved Tummo as a secret practice for centuries, teaching it only to advanced monks who had proven their discipline. They understood that power without wisdom can corrupt, and that true mastery requires inner balance. For them, Tummo was not about showing off miracles. It was about aligning with the divine fire that lives in all things, the spark of life itself. In a modern world filled with stress, fatigue, and disconnection, Tummo stands as a reminder: you are not as fragile as you believe. You carry within you a furnace of energy, waiting to be awakened. Through breath, visualization, and focus, you can light that fire, banish the cold, and discover a strength that feels almost otherworldly. The monks of Tibet may have used Tummo to melt snow in the mountains, but for us, its lesson is just as valuable. We can melt the frozen fears within ourselves, ignite our inner fire, and step into life with warmth, power, and unshakable presence. Ayurvedic oil, pulling for detox and vitality. Long before modern medicine, before the rise of toothbrushes, mouthwash, and dental treatments, the ancient system of Ayurveda in India discovered a practice so simple yet so transformative that it was passed down for thousands of years. This practice is known as oil pulling, and though it may sound unusual at first, it was considered one of the most effective ways to cleanse the body, strengthen health, and restore vitality. At its essence, oil pulling is the act of swishing natural oil, traditionally sesame or coconut oil, in the mouth for an extended period of time, usually 10 to 20 minutes. While today many see it as a natural dental remedy, the ancients believed it did far more than whiten teeth or freshen breath. To Ayurveda, the mouth was not just the beginning of digestion, it was a mirror of overall health. Toxins that built up in the body, known as ama, were believed to accumulate in the oral cavity, spreading illness and draining energy. By drawing these impurities out through oil pulling, one could purify the system and restore balance. The practice works on both a physical and energetic level. Physically, swishing oil acts like a magnet, pulling harmful bacteria, plaque, and toxins from the gums, teeth, and tongue. Modern science supports this, showing that oil pulling reduces harmful oral bacteria linked not only to tooth decay and gum disease, but also to systemic health issues such as heart disease and inflammation. Energetically, Ayurveda saw the mouth as connected to vital organs and channels throughout the body. Cleansing the mouth was seen as cleansing the entire system, unlocking vitality that had been weighed down by toxins. But oil pulling was not merely about physical health. It was about longevity and energy. Ancient Ayurvedic texts describe it as a daily ritual that strengthens the jaw, clears the sen, says, sharpens the voice, and even prevents wrinkles and premature aging. Practitioners reported feeling lighter, clearer, and more energized after consistent use. For them, it was not a minor hygiene trick. It was a cornerstone of daily self-care, just as vital as eating well or breathing properly. The ritual itself carries a meditative quality. In the morning, before food or drink, one takes a spoonful of oil and begins swishing gently. At first, the oil feels thick, but as it mixes with saliva, it becomes thin and frothy. This transformation mirrors what is happening inside. Toxins are being drawn out, impurities dissolved, and the system slowly purified. After the practice, the oil is spat out, not swallowed, for it now carries what the body no longer needs. What remains is a mouth that feels clean, a body that feels lighter, and a mind that begins the day with clarity. Today, oil pulling has gained popularity across the world as part of the growing interest in natural wellness. People are rediscovering what the ancients already knew, that health begins in the mouth, and that something as simple as swishing oil can ripple outward into improved digestion, stronger immunity, and greater energy. Studies even show that oil pulling can rival modern mouthwash in reducing harmful bacteria without the harsh chemicals. What once seemed like a mystical practice is now supported by modern science. But beyond the scientific benefits, oil pulling carries a deeper lesson. In a world where people search for complicated solutions, high-tech treatments, and expensive cures, Ayurveda reminds us that true healing often lies in the simplest practices. A spoonful of oil, a few minutes of mindfulness, and the willingness to honor an ancient ritual can do more for vitality than we imagine. It is not just about cleaning the mouth, it is about creating space for the body's natural intelligences to thrive. To practice oil pulling is to reconnect with a lineage of wisdom that saw health as balance, not as battle. It is a reminder that our bodies are not machines to be fixed when broken, but living systems that flourish when cared for with consistency. The ancients knew this, and that is why they guarded and passed down the ritual of oil pulling through generations. When you swish the oil, you are not only cleansing the body, you are participating in a practice that has endured for thousands of years, a ritual of purification that aligns you with nature's rhythm. In its simplicity lies its genius. In its consistency lies its power. Oil pulling is not just about detox. It is about awakening vitality, renewing energy, and honoring the ancient truth that health begins from within. Shamanic shadow work for emotional mastery. Across ancient cultures, from the forests of the Amazon to the deserts of North America, shamans were revered as healers, guides, and bridge builders between the seen and unseen worlds. They were not only doctors of the body, but also doctors of the soul, capable of navigating the hidden realms of the human spirit. Among their most powerful practices was something we now call shadow work, the art of facing the darkest parts of ourselves in order to reclaim wholeness and emotional mastery. The shadow is a concept often associated with modern psychology, especially the work of Carl Jung, who described it as the hidden side of the personality, the fears, traumas, suppressed emotions, and unacknowledged desires we keep buried. But long before Jung gave it a name, shamans understood it. They knew that within every human being lies not only light, but also darkness, and that ignoring the shadow only gives it more power. To the shaman, true healing could not occur until the hidden wounds of the soul were brought to light. Shamanic shadow work often began with ritual. Through drumming, chanting, fasting, or the use of plant medicines, the seeker would enter an altered state of consciousness, a trance where the boundaries between conscious and unconscious dissolved. In this sacred state, visions emerged, spirits, animals, or symbols that represented the seeker's hidden fears or unhealed pain. These were not seen as hallucinations, but as truths rising from the depths of the soul, truths that had to be faced if the person wished to become whole. The process was not easy. To confront the shadow meant to see oneself honestly, to face anger, grief, jealousy, shame, or unresolved trauma. Many avoided this path because it was uncomfortable, even terrifying. But the shaman knew that avoidance came at a cost. What we repress does not disappear. T festers. Suppressed emotions manifest as illness, destructive patterns, or toxic relationships. By guiding the seeker through shadow work, the shaman helped them bring these wounds into awareness, where they could finally be understood, released, and transformed. This journey of descent into the shadow was seen as a kind of death and rebirth. The old self, the one built on denial and fear, had to die, so that a stronger, wiser self could emerge. Shamans taught that within the shadow lies hidden power. The emotions we repress also contain our deepest energy. Anger, when healed, becomes strength. Fear, when faced, becomes courage. Grief, when processed, becomes compassion. By confronting the shadow, the seeker did not just remove pain, they unlocked gifts that had been trapped beneath it. In modern times, psychologists echo this wisdom. Therapy often involves revisiting past wounds, recognizing suppressed feelings, and integrating them into conscious awareness. But shamanic shadow work adds another dimension. It is not only psychological, but spiritual. It treats the shadow as part of the soul's journey, a sacred initiation that leads to transformation. It is about more than healing. It is about reclaiming lost parts of ourselves, a process known as soul retrieval. For anyone seeking emotional mastery, the lesson of shamanic shadow work is clear. You cannot control your emotions by ignoring them. Mastery does not mean suppression. It means integration. It means looking into the darkness with courage and learning what it has to teach. Every shadow, no matter how frightening, carries wisdom. Every buried emotion points to a wound that can be healed. To practice shadow work today does not require a jungle or a shaman, though their wisdom remains invaluable. It can begin with self-reflection, journaling, meditation, or guided therapy. The key is honesty. Asking yourself what emotions you avoid, what patterns repeat in your life, and what fears hold you back. Facing them may be painful, but in that pain lies liberation. The shamans knew a truth that modern society often forgets. Light and dark are not enemies, but partners. Wholeness comes not from destroying the shadow, but from embracing it. By walking into our inner darkness, we discover a deeper light. By mastering our shadow, we master ourselves, and that mastery is not control, it is freedom. Shamanic shadow work reminds us that healing is not about escaping who we are. It is about becoming who we truly are, by facing the parts we have long hidden. Emotional mastery begins not with perfection, but with courage. And once we find the courage to meet our shadow, we discover that the very darkness we feared is the gateway to our greatest strength.
Viking Berserker. Mindset for unstoppable courage. In the brutal world of the Viking Age, where battles were fought with axe and shield and survival depended on sheer strength and willpower, there existed a legendary class of warriors feared across Europe, the Berserkers. These men were not ordinary fighters. When they entered battle, they fought with such intensity, such fury, that enemies described them as more beast than human. They seemed immune to pain, unstoppable in their rage, and utterly fearless in the face of death. This was the Berserker mindset, a state of being where fear dissolved, hesitation vanished, and raw courage consumed the soul. The word Berserker is believed to mean bear shirt, suggesting that these warriors channeled the spirit of the bear,
a creature of immense strength and relentless ferocity. Others say it meant bare shirt, because they would charge into battle without armor, relying solely on their rage and their will. Either way, the image was the same: warriors who abandoned the normal limits of human fear and fought as if possessed by an untamed force. The Berserker mindset was not born in the heat of battle alone. It was cultivated. These warriors trained themselves to enter a trance-like state, often through rituals, chanting, drumming, or even consuming intoxicating herbs. In this altered state, they shed their ordinary identity, stepping into something primal, something beyond rational thought. They no longer fought with caution or restraint. They became the embodiment of courage, wild and unstoppable, striking fear into their enemies before a single blow was landed. But the true power of the Berserker mindset was not just in physical strength, it was in psychological dominance. To face an opponent who felt no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy was to face the embodiment of chaos. Many battles were won, not because the Berserkers were stronger, but because their enemies' spirits broke at the sight of their fearless fury. In this way, courage itself became a weapon, more powerful than steel. Modern science offers a glimpse into how this state may have worked. Under extreme stress, the human body can release a surge of adrenaline, shutting down pain receptors and amplifying strength and speed. Most people experience this only in rare moments of crisis, but the Berserkers learned to summon it at will. Through ritual, mindset, and sheer willpower, they tapped into the body's hidden reserves of power and used it to dominate the battlefield. Yet the Berserker mindset was more than rage. At its heart, it was about transcending fear. Fear is the chain that holds most people back. It causes hesitation, doubt, and retreat. The Berserkers shattered that chain by embracing a truth. Death is inevitable, so why fear it? Once you accept this, you become free. You no longer waste energy on what might happen. You throw everything into what must be done. That is what made the Berserkers unstoppable. They did not fight to survive. They fought as if survival no longer mattered. In today's world, we may not fight with axes on frozen fields, but the lesson of the Berserker mindset is still alive. We all face battles, moments where fear whispers in our ear, where hesitation threatens to rob us of opportunity, where doubt weakens our will. To summon the Berserker within is to silence that fear, to enter a state of total commitment where nothing exists except the task before you. Whether it is facing a challenge, taking a risk, or standing up against overwhelming odds, the Berserker mindset teaches us to go forward without hesitation, without retreat, and without fear. Of course, like fire, this mindset must be controlled. The Vikings themselves knew that rage without direction could be destructive. To master the Berserker state was not to lose yourself completely, but to channel that primal energy into courage, focus, and unshakable determination. It was about awakening the warrior within, not just for battle, but for life itself. The Berserker warriors remind us that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. When you step beyond hesitation, when you burn away fear with the fire of willpower, you discover a strength that feels limitless. That is the Berserker secret. That is what makes courage unstoppable. Forbidden Chinese Neigong for lifespan extension. In the ancient mountains of China, far from the bustle of the cities, sages and martial masters practiced a discipline so secretive that it was rarely taught outside closed circles. This practice was called Neigong, meaning internal skill or inner work. Unlike external martial arts that focused on physical strikes and strength, Neigong was about cultivating the hidden forces within, the life energy known as qi. It was whispered that those who mastered it could extend their lifespan, preserve vitality, and unlock levels of strength and awareness far beyond ordinary human limits. To the outside observer, Neigong may have seemed like slow, meditative movements combined with deep breathing, but the masters knew that what was happening inside was far more profound. Neigong was about refining the body's subtle energy, circulating it through invisible channels and storing it within the body's energy centers. It was seen as a kind of alchemy, transforming breath into vitality, vitality into spirit, and spirit into immortality. The idea of extending life was not a myth for these practitioners. In ancient Taoist traditions, longevity was a sacred goal, not pursued through medicine or wealth, but through harmony with the body and the universe. Gong offered the tools to achieve this by slowing the decay of the body and keeping energy flowing freely. Where ordinary people allowed stress, poor habits, and aging to block their energy, Gong adepts kept their life force pure, strong, and balanced. They believed that when qi flowed without obstruction, illness could not take root, and the body could resist aging itself. The training was both physical and mental. Practitioners practiced deep abdominal breathing, drawing air into the lower belly and circulating it through the body with visualization. They held postures that looked simple yet demanded immense focus, standing like trees for long periods to ground energy. They combined this with meditation, silence, and inward awareness, building not only physical resilience but also spiritual clarity. Over time, the body became stronger, the mind sharper, and the spirit calmer. It was not just exercise, it was transformation. Legends speak of Taoist masters who lived far beyond the normal human lifespan, their bodies youthful even in old age. While skeptics dismiss these tales as exaggerations, the truth is that modern science now confirms some of what the ancients taught. Deep breathing calms the nervous system, reduces stress hormones, and supports cellular repair. Slow, mindful movements improve circulation, flexibility, and balance. Meditation strengthens the brain and protects it against aging. In this way, Gong was centuries ahead of modern longevity science. It combined all these elements into one unified practice. But Gong was considered forbidden for a reason. Masters guarded it closely, teaching only to trusted students. They feared that if the techniques fell into the wrong hands, they could be misused for power, for control, or for selfish gain. More than just health exercises, Gong tapped into deep forces of the human system. Without the right discipline, balance, and humility, these forces could harm rather than heal. This secrecy gave Gong an aura of mystery, passed quietly from teacher to disciple like a sacred treasure. The philosophy behind Gong was simple, yet profound. Aging and decay were not inevitable. They were the result of imbalance. Just as a river that flows freely remains clear while a stagnant pool becomes polluted, the human body thrives when energy flows and declines when it stagnates. By restoring this flow, one could resist illness, slow aging, and even touch the edges of immortality. In the modern world, Gong offers a powerful lesson. While we may not seek physical immortality, we all seek vitality, clarity, and resilience. By practicing deep breathing, mindful movement, and inner stillness, we awaken the body's natural intelligence. We strengthen not only the muscles and organs, but the very life force that animates us. Longevity is not about living forever. It is about living fully, with energy and presence, for as long as possible. Gong reminds us that the key to lifespan extension is not found in external medicine alone, but within ourselves. The breath, the mind, and the flow of energy are the true foundations of vitality. The ancients knew it, and they preserved it in the practice of Gong, a discipline that still whispers its secrets to those willing to listen. Samurai 12. Rhythmic breathing for focus. The samurai of Japan were not just warriors of the sword, they were masters of discipline, spirit, and mind. To them, battle was not only a test of skill, but a test of presence. A single moment of hesitation could mean death, and so they trained not just their bodies but also their breathing, their awareness, and their focus. Among their most guarded practices was the art of 12 rhythmic breathing, a method designed to sharpen concentration, calm the mind, and unlock unwavering clarity even in the chaos of combat. Breath has always been the invisible thread linking body and spirit. For the samurai, This truth was elevated into a science. They understood that when breath is shallow and erratic, the mind becomes restless, scattered, and weak. But when breath is deep, steady, and rhythmic, the mind becomes anchored, still, and unshakable. Through 12 rhythmic breathing, they trained themselves to take full control of this hidden power, transforming anxiety into calm, fear into courage, and distraction into razor-sharp focus. The practice itself was simple in appearance, yet profound in effect. A samurai would inhale deeply for a count of 12, hold the breath for 12, exhale for 12, and then pause for another 12 before beginning again. This cycle of controlled breathing created a rhythm that synchronized body, mind, and spirit. With each round, the body released tension, the heartbeat slowed, and the mind entered a state of pure awareness. By mastering this rhythm, the samurai could remain calm under pressure, see clearly in moments of danger, and act with precision when others froze in fear. But this was not merely about surviving battle. The samurai saw breath as the foundation of Kai, the vital life energy that animated all living beings. By regulating their breath in 12-count cycles, they believed they were harnessing Ji and directing this energy, storing it within the body and sharpening it like a blade. Just as a sword had to be forged, polished, and balanced, so too did the warrior's spirit require discipline, refinement, and alignment. The effects of this practice went far beyond the battlefield. A samurai who mastered 12 rhythmic breathing carried its benefits into daily life, remaining calm in negotiation, centered in leadership, and focused in meditation. The breath became a constant reminder that mastery of the self was the foundation of mastery over any external challenge. To control breath was to control mind, and to control mind was to control destiny. Modern science confirms what the samurai already knew. Slow, controlled breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering stress hormones, balancing the heart rate, and improving focus. Rhythmic breathing improves oxygen flow, enhances concentration, and even alters brainwave patterns, bringing the mind into a calm yet alert state. Today, athletes, soldiers, and even surgeons use similar techniques to maintain steady hands and clear minds under extreme pressure. What we now study with science, the samurai perfected through discipline centuries ago, but there was also a deeper, almost spiritual dimension to their practice. The samurai believed that each breath connected them to the universe, that inhaling drew in the energy of life itself, and exhaling released all that was unnecessary. The 12-count rhythm was not arbitrary. It symbolized balance, harmony, and completeness. Each cycle was like a meditation on life itself: birth, pause, death, and stillness. By aligning their breath with this rhythm, the samurai aligned themselves with the very flow of existence. For us today, the lesson is powerful. In a world of constant noise, stress, and distraction, our breathing is often shallow and unconscious, leaving our minds restless and scattered. By practicing 12 rhythmic breathing, even for a few minutes a day, we can reclaim focus, calm, and clarity. It is a practice not only for warriors on a battlefield, but for anyone facing the battles of daily life, stress at work, emotional turmoil, or moments of decision where clarity is everything. The samurai remind us that true strength does not come only from weapons or muscle. It comes from mastery of the self, and that mastery begins with something as simple, as natural, and as powerful as the breath. The 12 rhythmic breathing practice was their key to unshakable focus, and it remains a key for us as well, a way to sharpen our minds, steady our spirits, and meet life's challenges with the calm precision of a true warrior. Sufi Dhikr for tranquil euphoria. Across deserts and ancient cities, under the shadow of minarets and within the walls of quiet sanctuaries, the Sufis, the mystics of Islam, developed practices that sought not just to understand God, but to dissolve completely into divine presence. Among their most powerful disciplines was Dhikr, which literally means remembrance. At its core, Dhikr is the practice of repeating sacred words or phrases, often the names of God, in order to strip away distraction, ego, and worldly concerns, until only a state of pure tranquility and euphoric union remains. Dhikr is more than prayer. It is rhythm, sound, and vibration combined into a spiritual technology of transformation. The Sufis believe that the heart becomes clouded with forgetfulness, weighed down by fear, desire, and attachment. Dhikr was their way of polishing that heart, repeating divine names until the soul shone like a mirror reflecting nothing but the infinite. In this practice, the repetition is not mechanical but devotional, not dry but alive. Each breath becomes a vehicle for remembrance, each word a spark that draws the seeker closer to God. The form Dhikr takes can vary. Sometimes it is silent, whispered only within the heart. Other times it is spoken aloud in soft tones, creating a soothing rhythm that lulls the mind into stillness. In its most powerful form, Dhikr can be ecstatic, chanted in groups, accompanied by music, movement, or even the famous whirling dances of the dervishes. In these moments, seekers lose all sense of separation, entering states of deep euphoria where the self dissolves and only love remains. To onlookers, it may seem like frenzy, but to the practitioners, it is peace beyond words, a taste of eternity within the finite body. The psychological effects of Dhikr are profound. Repetition quiets the restless chatter of the mind, slowing thoughts and drawing focus to the present. The rhythm of breath and sound calms the nervous system, lowering stress and creating inner peace. Modern science now shows that mantra repetition, chanting, and rhythmic breathing can synchronize brainwaves, increase dopamine, and even produce feelings of bliss. The Sufis did not need neuroscience to explain this. They experienced it directly through centuries of practice. But beyond psychology, Dhikr carried a deeper meaning. It was not about escaping the world, but about transforming the way one lives within it. A heart that remembers God constantly cannot be consumed by anger, fear, or greed. A mind that vibrates with divine names sees the world differently. Every encounter becomes sacred, every moment infused with meaning. To practice Dhikr was to live in constant awareness of the divine presence, and in that awareness to find both tranquility and strength. What makes Dhikr extraordinary is its accessibility. Unlike complex rituals or hidden knowledge, Dhikr requires no special tools, no elaborate training. It is a practice anyone can begin at any moment. All it requires is the willingness to remember, to turn inward, and to repeat the words that connect one to the eternal. Yet its simplicity hides its depth. For those who dedicate themselves to it, Dhikr becomes not just a practice, but a way of life. The Sufi poets captured this truth beautifully. Rumi, the great mystic, spoke of remembrance as the fire that melts the self and reveals the soul's true nature. Hafiz described it as the song that awakens love. For the Sufis, Dhikr was not duty, it was joy. It was the rhythm of love calling the lover back to the beloved. In today's restless world, filled with noise and distraction, the practice of Dhikr offers a path back to stillness. It shows us that tranquility is not something we must chase. It is something we uncover when we let go of forgetfulness. The euphoric states the Sufis describe are not fantasies. They are the natural result of a heart fully aligned with remembrance. Dhikr teaches us that joy does not come from possessions, and peace does not come from control. True peace comes from remembrance, from centering the heart on what is eternal and unchanging. And when that remembrance deepens, tranquility blossoms into euphoria, a state where the soul feels at home in the presence of the infinite. The Sufis remind us of a timeless truth. The greatest ecstasy is not found in the world outside, but in the heart that remembers what it truly is, an expression of divine love. Through Dhikr, they discovered a key to that realization, and it continues to shine as a practice of both serenity and transcendence. Human echolocation, seeing without sight. When most people think of echolocation, they imagine bats soaring through the night sky, or dolphins navigating the deep ocean. But what if I told you that humans, too, possess the ability to see without sight? An ability that has been documented, practiced, and even scientifically studied. This phenomenon is known as human echolocation, and it reveals just how extraordinary the human brain truly is. At its core, echolocation is the ability to detect objects and spaces by interpreting sound waves. Bats emit high-pitched calls that bounce off surfaces, returning echoes that tell them where obstacles and prey are. Dolphins use clicks and whistles underwater for the same reason. Incredibly, blind humans have developed this very skill, using clicks of the tongue, taps of the cane, or even footsteps to create a mental map of their surroundings. To the untrained person, it might seem impossible, but to those who practice it, it becomes second nature, a form of vision without eyes. One of the most famous modern practitioners is Daniel Kish, often called the real-life Batman. Blind since infancy, Kish developed echolocation by making sharp tongue clicks and listening carefully to the returning echoes. With years of practice, he can detect walls, doorways, trees, and even the size of objects around him. He rides bicycles, hikes mountains, and moves through the world with a freedom that astonishes those who rely solely on sight. Scientists who studied him found that his brain's visual cortex, the part usually reserved for processing sight, is activated when he uses echolocation, proving that the human brain can adapt to see sound as vision. The practice itself is deceptively simple. Produce a sound and listen to how it returns. Yet the true mastery lies in the interpretation. A sharp, close echo means something is near. A faint, drawn-at echo suggests something distant. The quality of the sound, whether it is muffled, sharp, or hollow, reveals the texture and shape of the object. With training, practitioners can even distinguish between a parked car and a tree, between a flat wall and an open doorway. In essence, they construct an inner sound picture of the world. What makes human echolocation extraordinary is not only that it grants blind individuals a powerful tool for independence, it also challenges our assumptions about human limits. For centuries, we believed vision depended entirely on eyes. But echolocation shows us that perception is not limited to one sense. It is the brain's ability to interpret information in creative ways. Sight is not just about light, it is about awareness, mapping, and adaptation. In ancient traditions, this ability would have been seen as mystical, even supernatural. Shamans, monks, and sages often spoke of hidden senses, ways of perceiving the world beyond ordinary vision. In many ways, echolocation is a modern rediscovery of this truth. Humans are capable of far more than we realize when necessity pushes us to expand perception. From a scientific perspective, echolocation also reveals how plastic and adaptable the human brain is. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, means that when one sense is lost, others can grow stronger. Blind echolocators are not simply compensating with better hearing. They are developing an entirely new way of perceiving the environment, activating brain regions normally reserved for sight. This suggests that hidden within us all is a dormant potential, waiting to be awakened. For those who practice it, echolocation is more than survival. It is freedom. It allows blind individuals to navigate the world without constant dependence on others. It restores dignity, confidence, and independence. For the rest of us, it serves as a powerful reminder that our senses are not fixed. They are trainable, expandable, and deeply connected to the mind. The lesson of human echolocation is profound. We are not as limited as we think. The body and brain, when pushed beyond comfort, can awaken abilities that seem almost otherworldly. Whether through necessity or discipline, we can develop senses and skills that expand our perception of reality. Seeing without sight is not a metaphor. It is a living truth, and it shows us that the boundaries of human potential are far wider than we imagine. We are not defined by what we lose, but by what we awaken in response. In every human being lies an untapped depth of adaptability, and echolocation is just one shining example of how extraordinary we can become when we listen more deeply to the world around us. Sound healing, vibrational frequencies for transformation, from the chants of Tibetan monks echoing through the mountains to the deep hum of Aboriginal didgeridoos in Australia, sound has been used as a tool for healing, transformation, and awakening across nearly every culture on Earth. This is the ancient practice of sound healing, the use of vibration and frequency to align the body, calm the mind, and awaken the spirit. Long before modern science could measure sound waves, our ancestors understood that sound was not only something we heard, but something that penetrated every cell of our being. At its core, sound healing is based on a simple truth. Everything in the universe vibrates. From the tiniest atom to the vast galaxies, all matter exists in a state of vibration. The human body is no exception. Our organs, bones, and cells all carry specific frequencies. When these frequencies fall out of balance, illness, stress, or emotional pain can take root. Sound healing works by restoring harmony, using tones, rhythms, and vibrations to retune the body like an instrument that has drifted out of tune. Different instruments carry different powers. Singing bowls, often used in Tibetan and Himalayan traditions, produce deep, resonant tones that calm the nervous system and induce meditative states. Gongs, with their expansive waves, can wash over the body, releasing emotional blockages and clearing stagnant energy. Drums have been used by shamans for millennia to alter consciousness, guiding journeys into the unseen realms. Even the human voice, the simplest instrument of all, can be a tool of immense healing power, whether through chanting, humming, or mantras. The effects of sound healing are not only spiritual, but also physiological. Science now shows that certain frequencies can slow the brain's activity, shifting it into alpha and theta states associated with deep relaxate. Iron, meditation, and healing. Vibrations can lower stress hormones, regulate heart rate, and improve immune function. Some studies even suggest that sound can influence cellular repair, supporting the idea that frequency is the language through which the body communicates. What ancient traditions knew through experience, modern research is beginning to confirm. Sound is medicine. But the true power of sound healing goes beyond the physical. It works on the subtle layers of being, the emotions, the mind, and the spirit. A simple hum can soothe anxiety, a chant can uplift the heart, and a deep vibration can awaken memories buried within the unconscious. To sit in a sound bath, surrounded by layers of resonance, is to feel time dissolve. The body relaxes, the mind empties, and something deeper awakens, a sense of connection to the greater harmony of the universe. Throughout history, sound has always been linked with the sacred. In Hindu tradition, the sound Om is said to be the vibration of creation itself. In the Bible, the universe is spoken into existence through the word. Indigenous cultures describe the drumbeat as the heartbeat of the earth. Everywhere we look, sound is tied not just to communication, but to creation, transformation, and healing. In modern life, where noise often overwhelms us, sound healing offers a return to harmony. It reminds us that sound is not just noise, it is vibration, energy, and information. By listening intentionally, by surrounding ourselves with healing tones instead of chaotic ones, we can bring our inner world back into balance. Even something as simple as mindful humming or chanting can create profound shifts in mood, energy, and awareness. The lesson of sound healing is both ancient and timeless. Transformation does not always require struggle or effort. Sometimes it requires surrender, to lie back, listen, and let vibration do its work. The body knows how to heal when given the right conditions. Sound is one of those conditions, a carrier of balance, a teacher of stillness, and a reminder that we, too, are instruments within the great symphony of existence. To open yourself to sound healing is to rediscover harmony, not only in your body, but in your spirit. It is to realize that transformation can begin with something as simple, as universal, and as profound as a single tone resonating through the silence. Sacred geometry and its hidden energetic power. Across temples, pyramids, and ancient manuscripts, a mysterious language appears over and over again, not written in words but in patterns. Circles, triangles, spirals, hexagons, and intricate designs form what is known as sacred geometry, the belief that certain shapes and proportions are not only mathematically precise, but also energetically powerful. To the ancients, geometry was not just mathematics. It was the blueprint of creation itself, the code through which the universe expressed order, beauty, and harmony. At its essence, sacred geometry is built on the idea that everything in existence follows patterns. From the spirals of galaxies to the double helix of DNA, from the honeycomb of bees to the petals of flowers, the universe arranges itself in repeating mathematical structures. These patterns are not random. They reveal a hidden order behind reality. To study sacred geometry is to glimpse the invisible architecture of life, a harmony that links the microcosm and the macrocosm, the body and the cosmos. One of the most famous symbols of sacred geometry is the flower of life, a pattern made of overlapping circles that appears in cultures across the world. It is said to contain within it every fundamental shape in existence, the building blocks of matter, energy, and consciousness. The golden ratio, or phi, is another sacred proportion, appearing in the pyramids of Egypt, the Parthenon of Greece, and even the spirals of seashells. This ratio, approximately 1.618, has been called the fingerprint of beauty, a number that the human eye and spirit instinctively recognize as harmonious. The ancients believed these shapes were more than symbols. They were alive with energy. Constructing temples, altars, or objects in alignment with sacred geometry was thought to amplify spiritual power, attract divine forces, and create balance between heaven and earth. Walking into a pyramid or standing within a mandala was not just an aesthetic experience. It was an energetic one, designed to align the body and soul with the cosmic order. Modern science adds another layer to this mystery. Cymatics, the study of sound vibrations, shows that when sound passes through a medium like sand or water, it naturally forms geometric patterns, spirals, hexagons, and mandalas identical to those in sacred geometry. This suggests that geometry is not just symbolic, it is the natural language of vibration itself. Frequency creates form, and geometry is the bridge between the seen and the unseen. On a deeper level, sacred geometry teaches us that our very bodies are built on these same proportions. The structure of our DNA, the ratio of our bones, and even the rhythm of our heartbeat follow these universal laws. We are living expressions of the same geometry that shapes the stars. To contemplate these patterns is to recognize that we are not separate from the cosmos, but reflections of it. For those who practice meditation or spiritual work, sacred geometry serves as a tool of transformation. Gazing at a mandala or meditating on the flower of life is said to awaken higher consciousness, activating deeper awareness of unity and harmony. Some even use these patterns as energetic gateways, focusing on them to transcend ordinary thought and enter states of clarity, insight, or spiritual awakening. In today's world, surrounded by artificial chaos and disordered patterns, sacred geometry offers a return to alignment. It reminds us that beauty is not arbitrary. It is a reflection of balance and order. By surrounding ourselves with harmonious proportions, whether in art, architecture, or even how we design our living spaces, we can invite greater balance into our own lives. The hidden power of sacred geometry is not simply in its shapes, but in the truth it whispers. The universe is not random, but deeply ordered. Every line, every curve, every spiral carries meaning. To study these forms is to study the language of creation, the secret architecture of reality. Sacred geometry shows us that energy, matter, and consciousness are woven together by the same patterns, and when we align ourselves with those patterns, we too step into harmony with the very fabric of existence. Egyptian opening of the mouth ritual. In the land of the Nile, where pyramids touched the heavens and temples echoed with chants to the gods, death was never seen as an ending. To the ancient Egyptians, death was a passage, a doorway to eternity, and every soul required preparation to step into that sacred realm. Among their most profound ceremonies was the opening of the mouth ritual, a practice designed to restore life to the deceased, awakening their senses so they could eat, speak, breathe, and live again in the afterlife. This ritual was not symbolic alone. It was considered absolutely essential. The Egyptians believed that the soul was made of multiple parts: the ka, the life force, the ba, the personality, and the ach, the immortal essence. For these aspects to reunite in the afterlife, the body had to be awakened. Without this sacred ceremony, the spirit would wander powerless, unable to experience the eternal paradise promised by the gods. The opening of the mouth was the key to this rebirth, a spiritual reactivation of the senses. The ritual was elaborate, often performed by priests or family members dressed as Anubis, the jackal-headed god of death, or Horus, the son of Osiris. A mummy or statue of the deceased was placed upright, treated as if it were alive. Special tools, often made of copper or precious stone, were touched to the lips, eyes, ears, and nose, symbolically opening each sense. Spells from the Book of the Dead were recited, chants filled the air, and incense burned to call forth divine presence. Through this sacred act, the dead were believed to regain the power to speak prayers, eat offerings, see the gods, and breathe the air of eternity. The ritual also carried cosmic symbolism. The act of opening the mouth was more than reviving the dead. It mirrored the creation of the universe itself. Just as the god Ptah was said to have spoken the world into being, the deceased too had to have their mouth opened so they could join in the divine speech that sustains reality. In this way, the ritual was both personal and cosmic, linking the soul of the departed to the eternal order of creation. What makes the opening of the mouth especially fascinating is how much care and intention it carried. For the Egyptians, life and death were woven into a seamless cycle. Death was not feared as annihilation, but prepared for as transformation. The body was preserved through mummification, the soul was guided by sacred texts, and the senses were restored through this ritual, ensuring that nothing was lost in the journey to eternity. Modern scholars see in this ritual not just a religious act, but a reflection of the Egyptians' deep respect for the human experience. To them, sight, speech, breath, and nourishment were not merely physical functions, but divine gifts that continued into the afterlife. The ritual acknowledged that to be fully alive, even beyond death, was to be able to perceive, express, and connect. Even though the practice was rooted in ancient beliefs, the opening of the mouth carries lessons for us today. It reminds us of the sacredness of the senses we often take for granted: the ability to speak truth, to see beauty, to breathe deeply, to taste and experience life. For the Egyptians, these were not ordinary acts, but divine powers, worthy of ritual and reverence. In a deeper sense, the opening of the mouth also speaks to renewal. Just as the deceased was reawakened to a new life, we too have moments when we must open ourselves again, times when our voice feels silenced, our vision clouded, or our spirit dormant. The ritual becomes a metaphor for reclaiming our own aliveness, for awakening to the fullness of our own existence. The ancient Egyptians believed that nothing truly dies, that life is transformed, not destroyed. The opening of the mouth was their way of ensuring that this transformation was complete, that every soul stepped into the afterlife not as a shadow, but as a fully awakened being. And in that belief lies their timeless wisdom, that life, in all its forms, is sacred, and that even in death, the senses of the soul must be honored, restored, and celebrated. Taoist Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. In the heart of ancient China, the sages of Taoism spoke of a principle that seemed paradoxical yet profoundly powerful. It was called Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. At first, the term sounds like passivity or doing nothing, but to the Taoist masters, Wu Wei was far from idleness. It was the art of aligning so deeply with the flow of life that effort dissolved, struggle vanished, and actions unfolded naturally, as if guided by the Tao itself. The Tao, or Wei, is the underlying order of the universe, the eternal rhythm that moves rivers, grows trees, and spins galaxies. Taoists believe that when humans resist this flow, when we try to force outcomes or control what cannot be controlled, we create tension and suffering. But when we surrender to the Tao, when we move with its current instead of against it, everything becomes smoother, lighter, and more harmonious. Wu Wei is the practice of this surrender, not as weakness, but as the highest form of wisdom. Imagine water flowing down a mountain stream. It does not force its way around rocks. It simply finds the path of least resistance, adapting, bending, and eventually carving valleys over time. This is Wu Wei. Strength without strain, persistence without rigidity, power expressed through harmony. The Taoists urged people to live like water, to act with grace and spontaneity instead of force and control. In daily life, Wu Wei means learning when to step back, when to let things unfold, and when to act in alignment with the natural rhythm of events. It is not laziness. It requires awareness, patience, and trust. To practice Wu Wei is to recognize that life has its seasons, times to plant, times to grow, times to harvest, and times to rest. Forcing a harvest before its season only brings frustration, but aligning with timing brings abundance. Effortless. Effortlessly. The Taoist sages observed that the greatest leaders were those who practiced Wu Wei. They ruled not by imposing their will harshly, but by creating harmony, allowing people to flourish naturally. The greatest warriors fought not with brute force, but with timing, striking only when the moment was right, often defeating enemies with minimal effort. The greatest artists and poets created their works not through strained ambition, but by opening themselves to inspiration, letting creativity flow as naturally as the wind through the trees. Modern science now echoes these ancient insights. Psychologists describe a state called flow, where athletes, musicians, or thinkers perform at their peak with little conscious effort. Time seems to slow, actions feel seamless, and creativity emerges without strain. This is Wu Wei in practice, a merging of skill, awareness, and surrender into something greater than the self. The wisdom of Wu Wei also carries a lesson for our modern, hyper-driven world. We live in an age that glorifies hustle, constant effort, and relentless striving. Yet this endless pushing often leads to burnout, stress, and disconnection. Wu Wei invites us to remember that not all progress comes from force. Sometimes the greatest results come when we step back, breathe, and allow things to unfold naturally. Effortless action often achieves what force cannot. Spiritually, Wu Wei is about trust. Trusting the Tao, trusting the flow of life, and trusting that you are a part of this great harmony. When you let go of the ego's need to control everything, you discover that life itself carries you forward. You act, but the action feels as if it arises from something beyond you, something vast and eternal. In this state, even the simplest tasks become sacred, infused with ease and presence. The art of Wu Wei is not about abandoning responsibility or refusing to act. It is about learning the wisdom of timing, surrender, and alignment. It is about living so deeply in harmony with the Tao that every step you take feels like it belongs, every word you speak flows naturally, and every decision comes without inner conflict. The Taoist masters remind us that true strength is not found in resistance, but in harmony. Wu Wei shows us that life does not always require struggle. Sometimes it requires stillness, patience, and trust. And in that trust, we find a freedom and power that effort alone could never give.
Frankincense and myrrh for higher consciousness. For thousands of years, two sacred resins have held a place of honor in temples, rituals, and healing practices across the world: frankincense and myrrh. These fragrant gifts of the earth were so highly prized that they were offered to kings, burned in the holiest of ceremonies, and even carried across deserts on ancient trade routes that connected civilizations. To the ancients, frankincense and myrrh were not just pleasant aromas, they were gateways to higher states of consciousness, tools for healing the body, and bridges between the material and spiritual realms. Frankincense, drawn from the boswellia tree, was seen as the breath of the gods. Its smoke was believed to carry prayers upward, connecting human beings to the heavens. When burned in temples, its fragrance shifted the atmosphere, dissolving distraction and quieting the restless mind. Ancient priests used it to prepare the soul for communion with the divine, believing its scent could purify not just the air, but the spirit itself. In meditation, frankincense deepened awareness, expanding the mind beyond ordinary thought, creating the conditions for clarity, insight, and spiritual vision. Myrrh, harvested from the commiphora tree, carried a deeper, earthier essence. Where frankincense elevated, myrrh grounded. It was used in burial rituals, embalming, and healing ointments, symbolizing the soul's passage from the physical to the eternal. Myrrh was thought to strengthen the connection to inner wisdom, anchoring the seeker in presence while opening the heart to higher truths. In ceremonies, it created a sense of solemnity, reminding those present of the sacredness of life and the inevitability of transformation. When combined, frankincense and myrrh formed a balance of energies: heaven and earth, spirit and body, ascent and grounding. This is why they were often used together in sacred rituals. The ancients understood that spiritual awakening is not about escaping the body, but about uniting spirit with matter. Frankincense lifted the mind into transcendence, while myrrh ensured that this transcendence remained integrated, embodied, and real. Beyond their spiritual significance, both resins carried powerful healing properties. Frankincense was used to calm inflammation, heal wounds, and strengthen immunity. Myrrh was applied as an antiseptic, a treatment for infections, and a support for the body during illness. In many cultures, the line between medicine and spirituality was blurred, and these sacred substances were both remedy and ritual. Healing the body was inseparable from awakening the soul. Modern science is now beginning to validate what the ancients knew intuitively. Studies show that compounds in frankincense may reduce anxiety, relieve depression, and even enhance memory. Myrrh has been found to support immune health, fight harmful bacteria, and reduce pain. Yet beyond the science lies the mystery. Why does the simple act of burning these resins, of inhaling their smoke, so profoundly alter our state of being? Perhaps it is because scent bypasses the rational mind, reaching directly into the limbic system of the brain, where memory, emotion, and consciousness reside. The ritual of using frankincense and myrrh is as important as their physical effects. To light them is to create sacred space, to step out of the ordinary and into the timeless. The rising smoke becomes a symbol of transformation, the solid turning into vapor, the seen merging with the unseen. In this moment, consciousness shifts. The mind quiets, the heart opens, and the spirit feels closer to the eternal. In today's fast-paced world, where the sacred is often forgotten, returning to these ancient practices can be deeply grounding. Burning frankincense during meditation or placing myrrh on an altar can remind us that higher consciousness is not something distant. It is available in the present moment, waiting to be awakened. These resins carry the wisdom of centuries, the prayers of countless generations, and the power to lift us out of ordinary awareness into the vastness of the divine. Frankincense and myrrh are more than aromatic resins. They are symbols of the eternal dance between heaven and earth, between the breath that ascends and the body that remains rooted.
They remind us that higher consciousness is not about leaving the world, but about seeing it with new eyes, purified, expanded, and awakened. Japanese Shinto. Purification for energetic clarity. In the sacred groves and shrines of Japan, there exists a spiritual practice that has endured for centuries. Shinto purification rituals, designed to cleanse both body and spirit, restoring clarity, harmony, and balance. In Shinto, the indigenous spirituality of Japan, purity is not just about physical cleanliness, it is about energetic clarity, a way of aligning oneself with the divine forces of nature, known as kami. The Shinto worldview teaches that impurity, kegare, accumulates through daily life. Negative emotions, misfortune, illness, or contact with death were all seen as forms of energetic pollution that clouded the spirit and disrupted one's connection to the kami. To release these impurities, purification rituals called Hara and Misogi were performed. These practices were not punishments or obligations, they were ways of returning to one's natural state of purity, reconnecting with the flow of life energy that exists within all things. One of the most profound forms of purification is Misogi, the ritual cleansing with water. Practitioners often stand under a waterfall, immersing themselves in the icy current as they chant prayers. The water is believed to wash away spiritual pollution, clearing the mind and restoring vitality. To experience Misogi is to feel the body renewed, the heart purified, and the spirit reawakened. The sound of the water, the shock of its coldness, and the act of surrendering to its force create a moment of deep presence, where clarity emerges as naturally as breath. Shrines also provide purification rituals for visitors. Before entering, worshippers approach a temizuya, a stone basin filled with pure water. With a bamboo ladle, they wash their hands and rinse their mouths, symbolically cleansing words and actions before stepping into sacred space. This simple act reflects a deeper truth. Before one can approach the divine, the spirit must be clear, the energy aligned. Other purification practices involve salt, fire, or ritual prayers. Salt, known for its protective and cleansing properties, is often sprinkled around homes, businesses, or even sports arenas in Japan to ward off negativity. Fire ceremonies burn away spiritual impurities, while the recitation of norito, sacred prayers, restores harmony through sound and intention. Each of these rituals reflects the Shinto understanding that purification is not only about the individual, but about maintaining balance with the environment, the community, and the unseen world of spirits. The deeper wisdom of Shinto purification lies in its focus on clarity rather than guilt. Unlike traditions that frame impurity as sin, Shinto sees it as a natural consequence of life, something that can always be cleansed and renewed. Just as dust gathers on a mirror, impurity gathers on the spirit. But with care and practice, it can be wiped clean, allowing the true self to shine again. This perspective fosters resilience, teaching that no matter how clouded one's energy may become, clarity is always possible. Modern psychology and wellness practices now echo these truths. Cold water immersion, once reserved for ascetics, is today recognized for its benefits, boosting mood, reducing stress, and enhancing mental clarity. The symbolic act of cleansing, whether through ritual baths, meditation, or mindful practices, continues to bring people into states of presence and balance. What the Shinto sages knew intuitively is now confirmed. Purification refreshes both body and mind, allowing us to meet life with renewed energy. At its heart, Shinto purification is about realignment, shedding what no longer serves us, and returning to a state of harmony with ourselves, others, and the natural world. It is an invitation to pause, to cleanse, and to remember that clarity is our natural state. In a world filled with stress, negativity, and constant distraction, the Shinto tradition offers a timeless reminder that with every cleansing act, whether as grand as standing beneath a waterfall or as simple as washing one's hands with intention, we can return to energetic clarity. And in that clarity, we find ourselves open again, to peace, to vitality, and to the presence of the divine. Thought seeding, programming reality with the mind. Every invention, every empire, every work of art, and every transformation in human history began with a single thing, a thought. What begins as an invisible spark within the mind has the power to shape entire worlds. The practice of thought seeding takes this understanding to a profound level. It is the deliberate planting of ideas, intentions, and visions into the fertile soil of the subconscious mind, where they can grow, take root, and ultimately manifest into reality. The concept is simple, yet powerful. The mind is like a garden. If you do not plant consciously, weeds will grow, doubts, fears, and distractions. But if you choose your seeds carefully, clear visions, empowering beliefs, focused goals, then, over time, these thoughts will blossom into the reality you experience. Ancient traditions, mystics, and even modern psychology agree on this. Where attention goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, creation follows. Thought seeding is more than positive thinking. It is not just repeating affirmations blindly or wishing for luck. It is a disciplined practice of aligning your inner world with the reality you wish to create. The ancients knew this well. Egyptian priests visualized desired outcomes during rituals, planting mental images into the spiritual realm. Vedic sages used mantras as seeds, repeating them until they reprogrammed both mind and energy. Even modern neuroscience shows that repeated focus reshapes neural pathways, rewiring the brain to expect, perceive, and create new possibilities. The process of thought seeding begins with clarity. Just as a gardener must choose the right seed, you must choose the thought you wish to cultivate. It must be specific, vivid, and charged with emotion. A vague wish produces vague results, but a precise seed carries power. Next comes intention, the focused energy that gives life to the thought. A seed without care will wither, but a seed nourished with attention, belief, and action will grow strong. Visualization is one of the key tools of thought seeding. When you imagine something in detail, your subconscious does not distinguish between imagination and reality. It begins to program the body and mind to act as if it is already true. Athletes, leaders, and innovators have used this technique for centuries, rehearsing success in the mind until it becomes second nature in the physical world. But thought seeding goes beyond personal ambition. In its deepest form, it is about aligning your mind with universal laws. Just as a farmer must work with the seasons, you must align your thoughts with the natural flow of energy. Planting seeds of greed, anger, or fear produces a harvest of suffering. Planting seeds of courage, clarity, and compassion produces growth that benefits not only yourself, but all those around you. This practice also requires patience. Seeds do not grow overnight. They need time, nurturing, and consistent care. Many people give up when they see no immediate results, not realizing that their seed is germinating beneath the surface. Persistence is the mark of a true practitioner, watering the seed daily with belief, gratitude, and inspired action, trusting that the unseen will eventually become the seen. In today's world of constant noise and distraction, thought seeding is more important than ever. Every advertisement, every headline, every opinion you hear is trying to plant seeds in your mind. If you do not guard your mental garden, you will find yourself living by thoughts that are not your own. To reclaim power, you must become intentional, choosing what to allow in and deliberately planting the seeds of the life you wish to live. The truth of thought seeding is timeless. Reality begins within. Your external life is a mirror of the seeds you have planted inside. Change the seeds, and the reflection changes. By mastering this practice, you do more than just think positively. You align thought, energy, and action into a creative force
capable of transforming everything around you. The ancients saw the mind as a sacred field, and thoughts as divine seeds. When planted with care, they yield fruits beyond imagination. Thought seeding is not just a mental exercise. It is the art of becoming a conscious creator, shaping reality with the most powerful tool you have always carried, your own mind.
Druid lunar timing for manifestation. Long before cities and machines, when people lived in harmony with forests, rivers, and the turning seasons, the Druids of ancient Europe observed the sky with reverence. To them, the moon was not just a distant light in the night. It was a living force, a cosmic clock that governed cycles of growth, renewal, and transformation. They believed that by aligning their intentions and actions with the phases of the moon, they could harness its power to manifest desires, heal the spirit, and connect more deeply with the rhythms of nature. This sacred practice is known as Druid lunar timing for manifestation. The Druids understood time differently than we do today. To them, time was not linear but cyclical, an eternal dance of waxing and waning, of death and rebirth. The moon was the most visible reminder of this eternal cycle, growing full and radiant before retreating into darkness. Each phase held its own energetic quality, and to ignore this rhythm was to act against the natural flow. But to work with it, to plant intentions in harmony with the moon's phases, was to ensure that those intentions grew with the full support of nature's forces. The new moon was seen as the beginning, a time of stillness and planting seeds. Just as farmers placed crops into the soil when the ground was fresh, spiritual practitioners placed their desires into the fertile soil of the subconscious during this phase. The new moon was a time of reflection, of clarity, of setting intentions quietly but powerfully. As the moon began to wax, moving toward fullness, it symbolized growth and momentum. This was the phase for building energy, taking action, and nurturing the intentions planted at the new moon. The Druids taught that as the moon's light expanded across the sky, so too did the energy available to help one's visions grow. The full moon was the moment of culmination. It represented illumination, manifestation, and clarity. Rituals performed under the full moon carried heightened power, as if the light itself amplified prayers, spells, and intentions. Many Druids gathered during this phase for ceremonies, believing that the veil between the human and the divine was thinnest, making it a time for both manifestation and revelation. After the peak, the moon began to wane, symbolizing release and letting go. Just as nature sheds leaves and prepares for rest, so too did the Druids use this phase to clear away what no longer served them, old habits, lingering doubts, or energies that blocked growth. This was not a time for creation, but for cleansing, a reminder that endings are as sacred as beginnings. Through these phases, the Druids wove a life of balance. They knew that manifestation was not only about calling things in, but also about releasing, resting, and renewing. To align with the moon was to align with the eternal pulse of the universe, to live in harmony rather than in resistance. Modern science now recognizes the profound effects of lunar cycles on the Earth and even on human biology. Tides follow the pull of the moon, plants sprout differently under its phases, and even human sleep and emotions shift in subtle ways with its rhythms. The Druids, without telescopes or data, sensed this truth and wove it into their rituals of manifestation. For us today, the lesson of Druid lunar timing is clear. Manifestation is not about forcing life into your will. It is about working with cycles greater than yourself. By honoring the phases of the moon, by planting intentions in moments of stillness and releasing in moments of decline, we remember that creation is a process of harmony, not struggle. To practice Druid lunar timing is to pause, look up at the night sky, and remember that you are not separate from the cosmos. You are part of its rhythm. Every phase of the moon is a teacher, guiding you in how to manifest, how to release, and how to live in balance. The moon reminds us that even in darkness, renewal begins. Even in fullness, surrender is necessary. And in following this eternal rhythm, your own manifestations take root, grow, and flourish with the power of the universe itself. Vedic mantra, chanting to reshape the brain. For thousands of years, the sages of ancient India carried a secret practice that they believed could unlock wisdom, purify the mind, and transform consciousness itself. Vedic mantra, chanting. These mantras, sacred sounds and syllables passed down through oral tradition, were not seen as ordinary words. They were vibrations, frequencies of energy, woven into precise patterns that could reshape thought, heal emotions, and awaken the brain to higher states of awareness. The Vedas, some of the oldest scriptures known to humanity, describe the universe itself as sound. Nada Brahma, meaning the world is sound. According to this philosophy, all creation is vibration, and by aligning with certain sounds, one can align with the very fabric of reality. Mantras, therefore, are not mere prayers but keys, unlocking specific states of consciousness. They are seeds of energy, planted in the mind through repetition until they grow into transformation. Chanting a mantra is both simple and profound. The sound is repeated rhythmically, often aloud, but sometimes silently, allowing it to sink deeper into the subconscious. Over time, the repetition begins to rewire thought patterns, quieting mental noise, dissolving anxiety, and replacing destructive loops with clarity and focus. Neuroscience now confirms this. Studies show that mantra chanting reduces activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain associated with overthinking, and increases regions linked to focus, memory, and emotional regulation. In other words, chanting literally reshapes the brain. Each mantra carries its own unique resonance. The sound, Om, considered the primordial vibration, is said to represent the essence of creation itself. Chanting it aligns the mind with unity, stillness, and expansiveness. Other mantras, like the Gayatri mantra, are designed to invoke wishes, Dom and illumination, awakening the intellect and opening the heart. Every syllable has purpose, carefully preserved through centuries of oral transmission to ensure that its vibration carries the intended power. The effects of mantra chanting extend beyond the brain and nervous system. They ripple into one's energy and spirit. Practitioners often report that after chanting, they feel lighter, calmer, and more connected to something greater than themselves. The rhythm of repetition creates a meditative trance, quieting the ego and allowing deeper layers of consciousness to emerge. In this state, the mind becomes fertile soil for new patterns of thought and being, reshaping not only the brain, but the self. In ancient India, mantras were used not only for personal growth, but also for healing and protection. They were chanted in temples to sanctify space, in rituals to invoke divine presence, and in medicine to restore balance. The belief was that illness often began in the subtle realms of mind and energy, and mantras could correct these imbalances before they manifested in the body. Modern researchers, too, are beginning to explore how sound vibrations may influence cellular health, immune function, and even genetic expression. What makes Vedic mantra chanting extraordinary is its accessibility. It does not require elaborate tools or environments, only the voice, the breath, and the willingness to repeat with intention. Over time, the sound imprints itself into the nervous system, becoming a rhythm that continues even in silence. Many practitioners say that the mantra begins to chant itself within, like a current of energy moving through the mind, guiding it towards stillness and clarity. In today's chaotic world, filled with constant stimulation and distraction, mantra chanting offers a return to simplicity. It reminds us that transformation does not always require force or complexity. Sometimes it requires only a single sound, repeated with devotion, echoing through the chambers of the mind until it reshapes thought, emotion, and perception itself. The sages of the Vedas believed that the human being is both instrument and listener, both vibration and receiver. When we chant, we tune ourselves like a sacred instrument, aligning with the deeper harmony of existence. And in doing so, we awaken the hidden power of sound to not only calm the mind, but to reshape the very structure of the brain. Ethiopian Book of Enoch, Secrets of Fallen Angels. Hidden away for centuries, preserved in the highlands of Ethiopia, lies one of the most mysterious and controversial texts in human history, the Book of Enoch. Revered by ancient mystics, rejected by mainstream religious authorities, and rediscovered by scholars only in recent centuries, this text contains a story so profound and unsettling that it continues to stir curiosity and debate today. At its heart are the secrets of the fallen angels, beings who descended from the heavens and forever changed the course of humanity. The Book of Enoch describes a time before the flood when the Watchers, a group of angels assigned to watch over humanity, broke their divine oath. They descended to earth, captivated by the beauty of human women, and took them as wives. From this union were born the Nephilim, giant beings of immense power and destruction. These hybrid offspring corrupted the world, bringing chaos, violence, and suffering to humankind. The fallen angels themselves taught forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, weapon-making, enchantments, astrology, and sorcery, skills that gave humans power, but also sowed destruction. What makes this text so fascinating is how it portrays knowledge itself as a double-edged sword. The fallen angels did not simply sin by breaking heavenly law, they accelerated human development, granting wisdom that humanity was not yet ready to handle. This theme echoes across cultures, the idea that divine knowledge, when taken too soon or used without wisdom, leads not to enlightenment but to downfall. In the Book of Enoch, this act of defiance against divine order brought about corruption so great that it triggered the Great Flood, sent by God to cleanse the earth. But the Book of Enoch is not only a story of rebellion, it is also a tale of cosmic justice. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uri, all intervene, binding the fallen angels and casting them into the depths of the earth until the final judgment. Their leader, often identified as Azazel, is condemned for teaching humans the secrets of war and deception. The story becomes not only about human corruption, but about the consequences of celestial rebellion, the eternal struggle between divine order and chaotic ambition. What is striking is how the Book of Enoch connects heaven, earth, and the destiny of humanity. It paints a universe alive with beings, both light and dark, whose actions ripple through human history. For those who preserved it in Ethiopia, this book was not merely myth. It was revelation, a guide to understanding why the world contained both divine beauty and destructive forces. The secrets of the fallen angels also hold symbolic meaning. On one level, they represent the temptation of forbidden power, the human desire to grasp knowledge beyond our readiness. On another, they reflect the eternal truth that with every gift comes responsibility. Knowledge without wisdom destroys. Power without restraint corrupts. The Book of Enoch serves as both a warning and a mirror, reminding humanity of the delicate balance between enlightenment and arrogance. In modern times, the Book of Enoch has fascinated scholars, mystics, and seekers alike. Some see it as a hidden history, a missing piece of the biblical puzzle. Others view it as a mystical allegory about inner rebellion and spiritual growth. Its imagery, fallen angels, giants, divine judgment, has influenced literature, philosophy, and even modern conspiracy theories. Yet beyond the debate, one truth remains. This text forces us to question the nature of knowledge, the boundaries between human and divine, and the cost of reaching beyond what is given. Ultimately, the Book of Enoch reveals a paradox. The very knowledge that can elevate us can also destroy us. The fallen angels are both bringers of wisdom and harbingers of ruin. Humanity's challenge is the same now as it was then: to learn, to grow, and to seek power, but to do so with humility, balance, and respect for the greater order of existence. The secrets of the fallen angels remind us that enlightenment is not just about acquiring knowledge, it is about becoming worthy of it. And until we learn that balance, every seed of wisdom carries within it the potential for both creation and destruction. Delphic oracle techniques for clairvoyance. High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus in ancient Greece stood the sanctuary of Apollo at Delphi, a place where kings, warriors, and seekers of wisdom traveled from every corner of the known world. They came not for gold, nor for power, but for something far more elusive: prophecy. At the heart of this sacred site was the Delphic oracle, a priestess known as the Pythia, whose words shaped wars, guided rulers, and offered glimpses into destinies yet to unfold. The techniques used at Delphi were designed not only to reveal hidden truths, but also to open the human mind to a state of heightened perception, a form of clairvoyance that blurred the line between mortal and divine. The oracle's rituals were precise and deeply symbolic. Before entering the temple, the Pythia would purify herself in the Castalian spring, cleansing body and spirit. She would then drink from the Casotis, a sacred stream said to open the mind to visions. Once prepared, she entered the inner chamber, the Aditon, where she sat upon a tripod placed over a chasm in the earth. From this fissure, vapors were said to rise, inducing an altered state of consciousness. Some historians suggest these vapors were natural gases, while others believe they were symbolic of divine inspiration, the breath of Apollo himself. In this trance-like state, the Pythia would utter fragmented words and visions, often cryptic and poetic. Priests standing nearby would interpret these utterances into prophecies, which were then delivered to those who had come seeking answers. To the Greeks, these words were not guesses or imagination. They were the voice of the god Apollo speaking through human form. The oracle's predictions were so influential that entire wars were fought, cities were founded, and empires rose and fell according to her guidance. But beyond the drama of history, the techniques of the Delphic oracle reveal something deeper about the nature of clairvoyance. The rituals, purification, meditation, altered states, and symbolic interpretation were methods of bypassing ordinary thought to access hidden layers of consciousness. The Pythia's state of trance resembles what modern psychology might describe as a flow state or deep meditation, where intuition sharpens and the subconscious delivers insights beyond rational analysis. The oracle also embodied a profound paradox. Her prophecies were often ambiguous, open to interpretation. This reflects an eternal truth about clairvoyance. The future is not fixed, but shaped by choices, timing, and perspective. The oracle did not dictate destiny. She revealed possibilities, patterns, and warnings, leaving humans to decide their path. In this way, her words were both guidance and mirror, reflecting the seeker's own inner truth. The Delphic tradition carried a spiritual philosophy as well. Carved into the temple walls were maxims such as "know thyself" and "nothing in excess." These phrases remind us that the greatest clairvoyance does not come from seeing the future, but from understanding the self. The oracle's role was not merely to predict, but to awaken awareness, helping seekers confront the hidden desires, fears, and ambitions that shape their questions. Modern seekers of insight can learn from these ancient techniques. Purification through meditation or ritual, entering altered states through breathwork or rhythm, and listening deeply to intuitive impressions all mirror the methods of the oracle. Today we may not sit above sacred fissures, but we can still access the inner temple of the mind, where intuition speaks in symbols and fragments, waiting to be interpreted with patience and wisdom. The Delphic oracle stands as a timeless reminder that clairvoyance is less about supernatural power and more about attunement. To access visions, one must cleanse the mind, open the heart, and enter a state where the divine can whisper through the silence. Whether those whispers come as prophecy, intuition, or sudden clarity, they remind us that within the human spirit lies the potential to glimpse truths beyond the limits of ordinary sight. The techniques of Delphi may have been shrouded in mystery, but their essence remains clear. To see beyond the surface, one must quiet the noise, open the senses, and trust the deeper currents of wisdom flowing through the soul. African ancestral rituals and genetic memory. Across the vast landscapes of Africa, through deserts, jungles, savannas, and mountains, runs a spiritual tradition older than recorded history, the honoring of ancestors. Long before modern science spoke of DNA and inheritance, African cultures understood that the lives of those who came before us echo within us. They believed that memory is not only carried in stories and rituals, but also encoded in the very fabric of our being. Through ancestral rituals, they sought to awaken this connection, bridging the living and the dead, past and present, flesh and spirit. Ancestral veneration was not a distant or abstract belief. It was a living practice. Families kept shrines within their homes, villages gathered for ceremonies, and entire cultures shaped their identity around the presence of ancestors. The departed were not seen as gone. They were active members of the community, guiding, protecting, and sometimes warning the living. To forget one's ancestors was to sever the root of one's own being, but to honor them was to draw strength from a lineage stretching back to the beginning of time. Rituals varied across regions but shared a common essence. Libations of water or wine were poured onto the earth to nourish the spirits. Drums and chants were used to call the ancestors, their rhythms stirring something deep in both body and memory. Offerings of food, tobacco, or symbolic items were made to maintain harmony between worlds. Some rituals involved trance states, where shamans or spiritual leaders acted as vessels, channeling the voices of ancestors so their wisdom could be spoken aloud once more. What is remarkable is how modern science now supports what these traditions have long known. Memory is not limited to the conscious mind. Genetic research shows that trauma, resilience, and even learned survival responses can be passed down through generations, a phenomenon known as epigenetic inheritance. In other words, our ancestors live within us not just symbolically, but biologically. The fears they carried, the strengths they cultivated, the wisdom they earned, all of it shapes us before we even draw our first breath. African ancestral rituals can therefore be seen as more than symbolic. They are a dialogue with the hidden patterns within our very cells. By honoring ancestors, practitioners acknowledge the unseen forces that shape their thoughts, emotions, and destinies. The ritual becomes a way of integrating those forces consciously, turning inherited patterns into sources of strength instead of hidden burdens. In many traditions, ancestral memory was also linked to healing. Illness was not seen solely as a physical condition, but as an imbalance in the spiritual lineage. If the ancestors were neglected, their discontent could manifest as misfortune or disease. Healing, therefore, often involved restoring connection, through prayer, offerings, or ritual journeys to bring the living back into alignment with their ancestral roots. But ancestral rituals were not only about reverence, they were also about empowerment. To remember where you come from is to stand on the foundation of countless generations. Every struggle survived, every victory achieved, every wisdom earned by those before you becomes part of your inheritance. African traditions taught that when you call upon your ancestors, you awaken a river of strength that flows through you, making you more than just an individual. You become the living continuation of a story far greater than yourself. In our modern age, many have forgotten this connection. We live in societies where ancestry is reduced to names on a family tree or data in a genetic test. But the African perspective invites us to see ancestry as living presence, as ongoing dialogue, as energy woven into the soul. To practice ancestral remembrance today, through meditation, storytelling, ritual, or simply lighting a candle for those who came before, is to awaken that hidden memory and restore balance within. The concept of genetic memory is not just science, it is also poetry. It is the recognition that within your heartbeat echo the drums of your ancestors, Within your breath lies the wind they once inhaled, and within your struggles live their unfinished battles. The rituals of Africa remind us that we do not walk alone. We are accompanied by thousands of voices, watching, guiding, and empowering us. To engage with ancestral rituals is to remember who you truly are. Not an isolated being, but the culmination of countless generations, carrying both their shadows and their light. And in remembering, you gain the clarity and strength to shape the future, not only for yourself, but for those yet to come.
Spartan visualization for absolute willpower. In the rugged land of ancient Sparta, a society built on discipline, endurance, and strength, the cultivation of willpower was not optional. It was survival. Spartans were trained from childhood to endure hunger, pain, and fear without surrender, forging a mindset that made them some of the most formidable warriors in history. Among their tools of mental conditioning was a practice we might call Spartan visualization, a way of using the mind to steel the spirit, strengthen resolve, and awaken an unbreakable force of will. Spartans understood that the body alone was not enough to win battles. A warrior could be strong, skilled, and well-armed, yet still fall if his mind faltered. Victory required inner mastery. Through visualization, Spartans prepared themselves for the harshest realities of combat long before they stepped onto the battlefield. They would mentally rehearse the chaos of war, the clash of shields, the weight of armor, the sting of wounds, the sound of enemies charging, until the fear that might paralyze another man became familiar, almost ordinary. By facing these scenarios in the mind, they reduced their power in reality. This practice was more than imagination. It was psychological conditioning. By repeatedly seeing themselves endure pain, hold their ground, and emerge victorious, Spartans programmed their nervous system for resilience. When the real moment arrived, their minds had already lived it, their bodies already adapted. What might overwhelm an untrained soldier only confirmed to a Spartan what he already knew. He could not be broken. Spartan visualization was also rooted in their culture of discipline. From a young age, boys entered the agoge, a brutal system of training that stripped away comfort and demanded total commitment. Visualization amplified this training. A Spartan did not merely endure hardship, he embraced it mentally before it even arrived. Hunger became an ally, pain a teacher, fear a challenge to overcome. Through visualization, they reframed suffering as strength, turning adversity into fuel for willpower. Modern science now affirms what the Spartans practiced intuitively. Studies on mental rehearsal show that visualization activates the same regions of the brain as physical experience, strengthening neural pathways and preparing the body for performance. Athletes, soldiers, and leaders use this technique today to sharpen focus, build confidence, and increase resilience. The Spartans were ahead of their time, proving that the battlefield is won not only with weapons, but with the mind. But Spartan visualization was not only about war, it was about life. The same mental conditioning that prepared them for combat also taught them to endure hardship, loss, and uncertainty without collapse. They lived by the principle that willpower is not something you are born with. It is forged through repetition, focus, and the willingness to confront fear head-on. To practice Spartan visualization today is to embrace this ancient wisdom. It is not about preparing for battle with sword and shield, but about preparing for the battles of the modern world, overcoming doubt, resisting temptation, enduring stress, and holding fast to your goals when everything around you pushes you to quit. It means seeing yourself succeed before you do, facing challenges in the mind before they come, and training your spirit to stand unshaken when reality tests you. The Spartans believed that true strength lay not in muscle but in will. The body can be wounded, the circumstances can be harsh, but the will, once trained, is untouchable. Through visualization, they proved that the mind is the ultimate battlefield, and victory belongs to those who master it. Spartan visualization
is a reminder that willpower is not mystical or reserved for the chosen few. It is a skill, cultivated with discipline, forged through mental rehearsal and sharpened by courage. When you adopt this practice, you step into the Spartan way, not of war, but of life, unyielding, disciplined, and absolutely unstoppable. Prehistoric psilocybin and divine communion, long before written language, before temples and organized religion, early humans gathered around fires beneath the stars, guided by the rhythms of nature and the mysteries of existence. In these prehistoric times, they encountered something extraordinary: psilocybin mushrooms, the so-called sacred fungi, that opened the doors of perception and connected them to realms beyond ordinary sight. For our ancient ancestors, psilocybin was not simply food or curiosity. It was a bridge to the divine, a means of communion with the unseen forces that shaped their world. Archaeological findings suggest that psilocybin use dates back tens of thousands of years. Cave paintings, petroglyphs, and ritual artifacts in places like Africa, Spain, and South America depict mushrooms alongside symbols of altered consciousness and celestial beings. These images hint at a time when humanity's relationship with psilocybin was not recreational, but sacred. For early hunter-gatherers, consuming these fungi was a way of stepping out of the ordinary and into the mystical, encountering visions of spirits, ancestors, and gods. The experience of psilocybin often shattered the boundaries of perception. Colors intensified, time dissolved, and the ego, the sense of being a separate individual, faded into a greater unity. For prehistoric humans, such states were not illusions, but revelations. They saw in them the spirit of the earth, the voice of the ancestors, and the heartbeat of creation itself. These journeys were communal as much as personal, often guided by shamans who used the mushroom to heal, to prophesy, and to connect the tribe with higher realms. Many scholars propose that psilocybin played a direct role in the evolution of human consciousness. The stoned ape theory, popularized by ethnobotanist Terence McKenna, suggests that early humans who consume these mushrooms developed enhanced vision, creativity, and social bonding, accelerating the growth of language and culture. Whether or not this theory is fully accurate, it reflects a profound idea: that psilocybin may have been a catalyst not only for spiritual communion, but for the very development of what it means to be human. The sacred role of psilocybin did not end in prehistory. Across the world, indigenous cultures preserved its use in rituals and ceremonies. In Mesoamerica, the Mazatec, Mixtec, and Aztec peoples referred to sacred mushrooms as Teonanacatl, the flesh of the gods, consuming them to commune with deities and gain divine guidance. For these cultures, psilocybin was not a drug. It was sacrament, a direct link to higher wisdom and cosmic truth. Modern science now revisits what the ancients already knew. Research shows that psilocybin quiets the default mode network of the brain, dissolving rigid patterns of thought and opening pathways for new connections. This neurological shift mirrors the spiritual experiences described by our ancestors, feelings of unity, transcendence, and deep meaning. Clinical studies reveal that psilocybin can alleviate depression, anxiety, and trauma, suggesting that its ancient role as healer and guide remains relevant in today's world. What makes psilocybin extraordinary is not just its effects, but the way it reconnects us to something greater. In the prehistoric world, where survival was harsh and uncertainty constant, these fungi reminded humans that life was not only struggle, but also mystery, beauty, and connection. They revealed that behind the physical world lay layers of spirit, and within the self lay a spark of the divine. To reflect on prehistoric psilocybin use is to recognize that spirituality is as old as humanity itself. Long before religions were formalized, humans sought direct experience with the sacred. And psilocybin was one of the earliest tools for this journey. It brought communion, not in theory, but in vision, in the felt presence of eternity. Today, as modern seekers once again explore psilocybin, we find ourselves returning to the wisdom of our ancestors, that consciousness is not fixed but expandable, that the divine is not distant but accessible, and that sometimes the smallest organism, a mushroom rising from the earth, can open the vastest doors of perception. Prehistoric psilocybin use reminds us of something timeless, the human longing to connect, to transcend, to experience the sacred directly. And in this communion, we glimpse not only the mystery of the universe, but the profound truth that we have always been part of it. Dream incubation for prophetic visions. Since the dawn of human consciousness, dreams have been regarded not as random illusions of the mind, but as sacred messages from realms beyond. Across cultures and civilizations, people have sought to use dreams as doorways to knowledge, guidance, and prophecy. Among the most powerful practices to emerge from this understanding is dream incubation, the art of deliberately planting a question, desire, or intention into the subconscious mind before sleep, in order to receive visions, answers, or prophetic guidance during the dream state. The ancients held dreams in profound reverence. In Egypt, temples were dedicated to sleep and dreaming, where priests guided seekers in rituals to invite divine visions. The Greeks practiced incubatio, sleeping in sacred sanctuaries of Asclepius, the god of healing, with the hope of receiving cures or prophecies through dreams. In Mesopotamia and beyond, kings consulted dream interpreters, believing that the fate of empires could be revealed through symbols that appeared in the night. Dream incubation was not superstition. It was seen as a science of the spirit, a dialogue with forces beyond the waking mind. The method was precise. A practitioner would begin by setting an intention clearly and with focus, perhaps through prayer, chanting, or writing the question on a tablet or cloth. Ritual purification, fasting, or meditation often preceded the practice, creating a receptive state. The sleeper would then rest in a sacred space, whether a temple chamber, a cave, or even beneath the stars, inviting the divine or the subconscious to deliver answers in dreams. Upon awakening, the dream was carefully recorded and interpreted, with every symbol, image, or emotion considered meaningful. Dream incubation worked because it harnessed the deepest layers of the human psyche. Modern psychology confirms what the Anaherz science intuited. The subconscious mind continues to process problems and questions while we sleep. In fact, many scientific discoveries, creative breakthroughs, and solutions to complex problems have been born in dreams. By focusing intention before sleep, dream incubation primes the mind to generate visions that are not random but purposeful, weaving together wisdom from both the inner self and, perhaps, the greater unknown. Prophetic visions through dreams were often symbolic rather than literal. A river might represent change, a bird might symbolize freedom, a storm could signify conflict ahead. Ancient interpreters understood that dreams spoke in a language of metaphor, requiring intuition and reflection. But when understood, they offered astonishing clarity, sometimes foretelling events long before they occurred. Even in modern times, the practice of dream incubation remains alive. Many spiritual seekers use journaling, meditation, and rituals before sleep to invite guidance. Scientists and artists often report that solutions come to them in dreams after consciously focusing on a problem before rest. The method transcends culture and religion because it is rooted in a universal truth. Dreams are not chaos, but conversation, and intention shapes the message received. What makes dream incubation so powerful is not only its prophetic potential, but its reminder that wisdom lies within us and around us, waiting to be accessed. By honoring the dream world as sacred, by entering sleep with purpose instead of passivity, we awaken the possibility that each night can bring revelation. To practice dream incubation is to treat sleep as more than rest. It is to treat it as a temple, a portal, a dialogue with mystery. It is to ask the question that burns within you, release it into the vastness of the subconscious, and trust that the answer will return in the language of dreams. The ancients knew what we often forget. Prophecy is not always thunder from the heavens. It is often whispers in the night, carried through symbols and visions that appear as we sleep. Dream incubation reminds us that we do not have to wait for destiny to unfold blindly. We can meet it halfway, shaping the path through intention, clarity, and the sacred art of dreaming. Egyptian astral projection and the Baka science. The ancient Egyptians held one of the most profound understandings of the soul in human history. For them, life was not limited to the body, nor was death an end. It was a transformation. Central to their spiritual science was the belief in the Ba and the Ka, two aspects of the soul that existed beyond physical form. Through rituals and practices, they sought to separate these subtle bodies from the flesh, allowing them to travel into other realms, gain wisdom, and commune with the divine. This practice is what we now call astral projection, but to the Egyptians, it was the science of the soul itself, the Baka science. The Ba was often depicted as a human-headed bird, capable of leaving the body and soaring between worlds. It represented individuality, consciousness, and the part of the soul that could move freely beyond the limitations of flesh. The Ka, on the other hand, was the vital life force, the double of a person, the spiritual essence that sustained existence. When harmonized, the Ba and Ka allowed the soul to transcend physical form, to travel through planes of reality, and to access knowledge beyond the reach of the senses. Egyptian priests and initiates practiced this science within temples designed as cosmic gateways. Through chants, incense, geometry, and meditative rituals, they created environments that mirrored the order of the heavens. Within these sacred spaces, initiates trained to loosen the soul from the body, allowing the Ba to lift like a bird, while the Ka anchored it to life. These journeys were not fantasy. They were maps of consciousness, teaching the soul how to navigate the afterlife and the hidden dimensions of existence. The Book of the Dead, or more accurately the Book of Coming Forth by Day, was filled with spells, prayers, and guidance for this very process. It described how the Ba must recognize its form, pass through gates guarded by spirits, and join with the Ka to attain immortality. Astral projection was not just preparation for death, it was rehearsal, a practice of navigating realms while alive, so that in death the soul would not be lost, but would ascend with clarity. Modern interpretations of astral projection echo what the Egyptians already knew. When in deep trance or meditation, many report experiences of floating above their body, traveling through landscapes of light, or meeting entities beyond the physical. Neuroscience suggests altered brain states can create out-of-body sensations, but spiritual traditions insist these experiences are not hallucinations. They are glimpses into the true nature of the soul. The Egyptians would say, the Ba is stretching its wings. The Baka science was also about power and wisdom. Pharaohs and priests were trained to journey beyond their bodies to consult gods, ancestors, and cosmic forces. These journeys gave them knowledge of future events, insights into healing, and authority as intermediaries between heaven and earth. To master astral projection was to prove mastery over fear, over death, and over the limitations of the physical world. At its core, the Egyptian teaching of the Ba and Ka reminds us that we are more than flesh. The body is a temple, but the soul is its true inhabitant. By learning to travel beyond the body, even if only in vision or meditation, we remember our divine nature. We realize that death is not an end, but a passage, and that the soul carries within it the power to transcend time, space, and even mortality itself. To practice the Baka science today is to reclaim this ancient wisdom. It means exploring the subtle dimensions of the self through meditation, dream work, or conscious projection. It means recognizing that life is not confined to the material, and that within you lies a bird with human face, the Ba, waiting to take flight. It means understanding that your vitality, your Ka, is not just fuel for survival, but a bridge between the mortal and the eternal. The Egyptians left us monuments, texts, and mysteries carved in stone, but perhaps their greatest legacy is this: the reminder that we are travelers between worlds. Astral projection was their way of proving that the soul could leave the body and return, carrying wisdom from realms beyond. And in this truth lies the ultimate liberation, the realization that we are not bound by the physical, but destined to soar like the bar, eternal and free. Underground labyrinths, as initiation chambers, beneath the surface of the earth, hidden in shadows and silence, lie ancient passageways carved from stone, labyrinths that twist and turn like the coils of a serpent. To many cultures, these underground labyrinths were more than architecture. They were spiritual tools, sacred spaces designed as initiation chambers. To walk them was to undergo a transformation, to die symbolically to the old self and emerge reborn into higher wisdom. The labyrinth has always been a symbol of the inner journey. Unlike a maze which seeks to confuse, a labyrinth has one winding path that leads inward and then back outward again. It is not a puzzle but a pilgrimage. When built underground, these labyrinths amplified their effect. The darkness, silence, and weight of the earth above stripped away the ordinary senses, forcing the initiate to turn inward. Each step was a descent into the subconscious, a confrontation with fears, and a preparation for rebirth. In ancient cultures, initiation was not a choice. It was a necessity. To step into adulthood, to take on spiritual roles, or to become a guardian of wisdom, one had to prove worthiness through ordeal. The labyrinth provided this ordeal without sword or battlefield. Its test was psychological and spiritual. Could the seeker navigate darkness, disorientation, and uncertainty while holding faith that the path would eventually lead back to the light? The design of these chambers was deliberate. Narrow passages evoked confinement, forcing the initiate to confront feelings of vulnerability and powerlessness. Sudden turns symbolized the unpredictability of life. Open chambers represented moments of clarity before plunging back into uncertainty. At the heart of the labyrinth, often in a central chamber, rituals were performed. Chants, prayers, symbolic deaths, and sometimes encounters with masked guide, as playing the role of spirits or gods. To reach this center was to confront the self stripped of illusion. To return was to emerge with new strength and understanding. From Crete's legendary labyrinth of King Minos to subterranean passageways in Egypt, South America, and India, labyrinths appear across cultures, always tied to transformation. Some were associated with the underworld, places where initiates symbolically descended to meet death before ascending renewed. Others mirrored the cosmos, with paths reflecting celestial patterns, teaching the initiate that to walk the labyrinth was to walk the universe itself. Psychologically, the labyrinth was a tool for reshaping consciousness. In darkness and solitude, the mind turned inward, confronting its shadows. The initiate was stripped of identity, of control, and of certainty. When finally they emerged, breathing fresh air and seeing sunlight again, they were not the same person who had entered. They carried within them the memory of having faced fear, surrendered to the unknown, and walked through symbolic death into rebirth. Modern science now recognizes that initiation rituals, though harsh, served profound purposes. They rewired the brain, breaking old patterns and cementing new identities. The labyrinth's twisting path mirrored this process, disorientation leading to clarity, challenge leading to growth. The ancients, though without neuroscience, understood that transformation requires journey, ordeal, and symbolic death. Today, labyrinths are still walked for meditation and healing. Some modern seekers enter constructed labyrinths in churches, gardens, or retreats, following the ancient path to silence the mind and awaken inner wisdom. Though no longer underground or bound by ritual, the experience remains powerful. To step onto the path, surrender to its turns, and trust the process of return. The underground labyrinths remind us of a timeless truth. Transformation requires descent. To grow, we must enter our own darkness, confront what lies hidden, and walk patiently until we find the center. Only then can we return to the world with new vision. The ancients built stone pathways to guide this process, but the real labyrinth lies within the human soul.
waiting to be walked. To enter the labyrinth is to say yes to transformation. To emerge from it is to carry the mark of initiation, the quiet strength of one who has faced the dark and learned that the path, no matter how twisting, always leads back to the light. Forgotten Qigong for immortality potential. Across the misty mountains and ancient temples of China, a secret practice was whispered about for centuries. Qigong, the cultivation of life energy, or Qi. While many forms of Qigong survive today as exercises for health, balance, and vitality, there were once hidden traditions said to go far deeper. Methods of channeling energy, not only to heal the body, but to extend life itself. These teachings, often guarded by monks and sages, became known as the forgotten Qigong of immortality potential. Qigong is rooted in the understanding that the human body is not merely flesh and bone, but a vessel of flowing energy. Just as rivers must flow freely to nourish the land, so too must Qi flow without blockage to sustain health and spirit. Through breathwork, movement, meditation, and intention, practitioners learn to guide this subtle force, strengthening the organs, calming the mind, and aligning with the rhythms of nature. But the highest forms of Qigong went beyond health. They sought to transcend aging, decay, and even death. Immortality in this sense was not always literal. Some believed it meant extending life far beyond normal limits, creating sages who lived for centuries. Others saw it as achieving spiritual immortality, transforming the body into pure energy and merging with the Tao, the eternal source of all things. In either case, Qigong masters believed that by refining the life force, one could escape the ordinary fate of decline and enter a higher state of existence. The methods were disciplined and secretive. Practitioners combined stillness and movement, cultivating breath so subtle it seemed to vanish, guiding Qi into energy centers known as the dantians. Visualization techniques imagined light flowing through the meridians, purifying every cell and organ. Internal alchemy practices sought to refine the three treasure, submerging outer essence Qi, energy, and Shen, spirit, into higher forms, eventually fusing them into the immortal body. This was not metaphor to them, it was science of the soul. Legends abound of immortals, or Xian, who mastered these teachings. They were said to withdraw into mountains, living on dew, herbs, and Qi itself, their bodies untouched by time. Some stories describe sages who vanished in bursts of light, leaving no body behind. To ordinary eyes, these tales sound like myth, but to the devoted, they were proof that hidden within Qigong lay a potential that transcended mortality. Modern perspectives provide another lens. Science shows that meditation, breath control, and energy-focused practices slow heart rate, reduce stress, boost immunity, and even influence genetic expression. Telomeres, the protective caps on DNA linked to aging, can lengthen through consistent meditative practices. From this view, the immortality promised by Qigong may have been both literal and symbolic, preserving the body far beyond expectation while awakening the spirit to timeless consciousness. What makes these forgotten teachings extraordinary is their emphasis on harmony. Immortality was never about ego or conquering death. It was about aligning so deeply with the Tao, the natural flow of existence, that the practitioner became one with its eternal rhythm. To live in harmony with heaven and earth was to transcend the struggle against time. In this way, immortality was not escape, but union. Though much of this knowledge has faded, echoes remain. Qigong schools today still teach forms aimed at vitality, long life, and inner balance. But the whispers of the old ways remind us that beneath the visible movements lies a deeper path, a discipline of body, breath, and spirit that may hold secrets yet to be rediscovered. The forgotten Qigong of immortality is less about clinging to life than about remembering our eternal nature. It teaches that within every breath lies power, within every heartbeat flows energy, and within the human spirit lives the potential to transcend limitation. Whether literal or symbolic, immortality in Qigong
was always about awakening the truth that we are not merely mortal beings, but eternal consciousness, wearing the body as a temporary garment, the Ouroboros, and infinite regeneration. Among the oldest and most enduring symbols in human history is the image of the Ouroboros, a serpent or dragon devouring its own tail, forming an eternal circle. Found in ancient Egypt, Greece, India, and alchemical traditions, the Ouroboros carries a message so profound that it transcends time and culture. The mystery of infinite regeneration, the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, destruction and creation. In Egypt, the Ouroboros appeared in funerary texts as a cosmic serpent encircling the sun god, representing the endless renewal of life as the sun dies each night and is reborn each dawn. For the Greeks, it symbolized the cyclical nature of time and existence, a universe without beginning or end. In alchemy, the Ouroboros embodied the great work, the transformation of base matter into gold, of mortal soul into immortality, showing that creation requires destruction and transformation requires surrender. The power of the Ouroboros lies in its paradox. It consumes itself even as it sustains itself. It dies in order to live. It destroys in order to regenerate. This paradox mirrors the human journey. Our old selves must constantly die for new versions of us to be born. Each ending we fear, relationships closing, identities dissolving, phases of life fading, is not an annihilation, but a rebirth into something greater. The Ouroboros reminds us that every collapse is a seed of renewal. Philosophically, the Ouroboros speaks to the cyclical nature of reality itself. Seasons change, stars are born and die, civilizations rise and fall. Even within the body, cells constantly die and regenerate. Life sustains itself through death. To resist this cycle is to suffer, but to embrace it is to awaken. The ancients used the Ouroboros as a map of wisdom, the understanding that eternity is not linear but circular, not a straight path, but a spiral, returning endlessly to itself, always renewed, always transformed. In psychology and spirituality, the Ouroboros also represents integration. By swallowing its own tail, the serpent unites beginning and end, self and shadow, conscious and unconscious. Jung saw it as a symbol of individuation, the process by which a person becomes whole, embracing not only their light but their darkness. Infinite regeneration, then, is not only cosmic but personal. It is the courage to face your shadows, to consume what you fear, and to emerge transformed by the very things you once thought would destroy you. Alchemy placed the Ouroboros at the heart of transformation. To the alchemists, the serpent devouring itself symbolized the eternal process of refinement, dissolving, purifying, and creating anew. It was not only the turning of lead into gold, but the transmutation of the soul, burning away the false, the egoic, the impure, until what remains is the eternal, the divine spark within. In this way, the Ouroboros became the ultimate emblem of spiritual immortality, the soul endlessly renewing itself, never lost, always reborn. Modern science, too, reflects this truth. Energy is never destroyed, only transformed. The matter that makes your body once belonged to stars, oceans, and ancient beings. One day it will return to the earth, reshaped into new life. The Ouroboros lives not just in myth, but in physics, in biology, in the very structure of existence. To meditate on the Ouroboros is to confront the greatest fear of humanity, death. But the serpent teaches that death is not final. It is simply part of the cycle. Every death, whether of the body, the ego, or a phase of life, is a doorway into regeneration. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. The end is always the beginning. The Ouroboros endures as a timeless reminder that destruction is not failure, but transformation, that endings are not emptiness but renewal, and that within the very act of dying lies the seed of eternal life. It teaches us that to embrace the cycles of loss, change, and rebirth is to discover the infinite within ourselves. Infinite regeneration is not a distant promise. It is happening now, in every breath, every heartbeat, every ending and beginning that shapes our lives. The Ouroboros invites us to trust this cycle, to see death not as an enemy, but as the guardian of eternity. And in doing so, we awaken to the truth that we too are part of the eternal circle, forever consuming, forever creating, forever reborn. Vow of silence for higher wisdom. Across monasteries, temples, and secluded mountains, seekers of truth have embraced one of the most radical yet simple disciplines, the vow of silence. At first, silence may appear as an absence, as though wisdom comes from words, books, and teachings, while silence is nothingness. But the ancients knew differently. They understood that silence is not empty, it is full. It is the language of the soul, the space where truth emerges, and the doorway to higher wisdom. In traditions from Buddhism to Christianity, Hinduism to Sufism, silence has been regarded as sacred. Monks in Tibet spend months in silence, cultivating mindfulness and awareness. Christian mystics retreated into the desert, practicing quietude to hear the whisper of God. Hindu yogis adopted mauna, sacred silence, as a discipline to purify speech and thoughts. Each tradition recognized the same truth, that noise drowns out the inner voice, while silence allows it to be heard. When a seeker takes a vow of silence, they are not only refraining from speech, but entering into a deeper practice. Silence becomes a mirror. Without the constant release of words, thoughts surface more vividly. At first, the mind resists, racing with noise, memories, and anxieties. But as days pass, the chatter settles, like dust sinking in water. In this stillness, awareness sharpens. The seeker begins to notice subtleties, the rhythm of breath, the sensations of the body, the patterns of thought. What once went unnoticed is revealed, and in that revelation lies wisdom. Silence also breaks the ego's hold. Much of our speech is a way of asserting identity, declaring opinions, defending ourselves, seeking approval. When speech is withdrawn, the ego loses its main weapon. The silence becomes an ego death, forcing the seeker to confront who they are beyond words, beyond roles, beyond labels. In this confrontatio, higher wisdom emerges, not the wisdom of intellect, but the wisdom of presence. The vow of silence was also seen as a form of spiritual protection. In many traditions, it was believed that careless words could leak vital energy, while silence preserved it. Words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. Silence, however, is unbreakable, untainted. By remaining silent, the seeker guarded their power, redirecting it inward instead of scattering it outward. This conservation of energy was said to awaken inner vision and clarity, turning ordinary awareness into spiritual insight. Modern science reflects similar truths. Studies on silence and meditation reveal that quieting external and internal noise enhances neuroplasticity, reduces stress, and improves focus. Prolonged silence even stimulates the growth of new brain cells in regions linked to memory and learning. What the ancients practiced as a spiritual discipline, neuroscience now confirms as a biological enhancement. Silence quite literally reshapes the mind. But the vow of silence is not about rejecting the world, it is about returning to it with clarity. After long periods of silence, seekers often find that when they do speak, their words carry more weight, more intention, more truth. They no longer speak to fill space or appease the ego, they speak from wisdom. Silence teaches the sacredness of speech, that every word is a seed, and what we plant in the world has power. In a modern age where noise is constant, through technology, media, and endless chatter, the vow of silence becomes even more vital. To practice it, even for a few hours or days, is to step outside the storm and remember the stillness within. It is to turn away from the outer voices and rediscover the inner guide, the source of wisdom that never shouts, but always whispers. To take a vow of silence is to acknowledge that wisdom is not always found in more information, more discussion, or more noise. Sometimes the deepest truths emerge when we stop speaking and start listening, to the heart, to the soul, to the silence itself. And in that silence, we discover that we are not empty. We are full, overflowing with presence, clarity, and higher wisdom.
Aztec Tonalpohualli, Time Manipulation Secrets. Deep in the heart of Mesoamerica, the Aztecs developed one of the most intricate and mysterious calendar systems in human history, the Tonalpohualli, the sacred count of days. Unlike the solar calendar that tracked agricultural cycles, the Tonalpohualli was a spiritual calendar, a map of destiny, guiding not only when to plant and harvest, but when to act, when to wait, and how to align with cosmic forces. To the Aztecs, time was not a neutral backdrop. It was alive, sacred, and capable of being influenced. Mastering the Tonalpohualli was, in their eyes, a way of manipulating time itself. The Tonalpohualli consisted of 260 days, divided into cycles of 20 day signs and 13 numbers. Each day had a unique energy, shaped by the combination of its number and sign, and each was ruled by particular gods and cosmic forces. For the Aztecs, no 2 days were the same. Each carried a different fate, a unique vibration that influenced the outcome of events. By consulting the Tonalpohualli, priests and diviners could determine the most auspicious times for rituals, battles, marriages, and political decisions. This calendar was more than mathematics. It was a spiritual technology. The Aztecs believed that time was cyclical rather than linear, a series of repeating patterns. By reading these cycles, one could anticipate the unfolding of events, much like reading the stars or seasons. In this sense, the Tonalpohualli allowed them not only to track time, but to bend it, choosing actions that flowed with the current rather than against it, amplifying chances of success and minimizing misfortune. At the center of this system was the belief that time carried divine energy. To act without consulting the Tonalpohualli was to walk blindly into the river of fate. To act with it was to sail with the current, harnessing the momentum of the cosmos. The calendar was a mirror of the universe itself, reflecting the interplay of gods, humans, and natural forces. The priests who interpreted it were not merely astronomers, but timekeepers of destiny, able to guide entire civilizations by aligning human action with cosmic rhythm. What makes the Tonalpohualli so extraordinary is its timelessness. Modern researchers have noted that the 260-day cycle aligns closely with natural patterns, the human gestation period, the growth cycles of maize, sacred corn, and even the movements of Venus, a planet deeply revered by Mesoamerican cultures. Whether by divine revelation or observation, the Aztecs created a system that harmonized human life with the rhythms of nature and the cosmos. To the Aztecs, this was not superstition. It was survival. Wars, coronations, and rituals were all timed with precision, for they believed that to act at the wrong time could invite disaster. Yet those who mastered the Tonalpohualli could bend fate, shifting outcomes by acting in harmony with the sacred order of days. In this sense, they were manipulating time, not by stopping or speeding it, but by mastering its flow. Today, the Tonalpohualli offers a profound lesson. Time is not merely numbers on a clock or dates on a calendar. It is energy, rhythm, and pattern. We too live within cycles, from biological rhythms to planetary movements, yet often ignore them. By rediscovering the wisdom of the Aztecs, we can learn to see time not as an enemy, but as an ally, to act not against its tides, but with them, and to unlock opportunities hidden in its patterns. The Aztec Tonalpohualli reminds us that true power does not come from forcing time to obey us, but from learning to dance with it.
When we align with its rhythm, we discover what the Aztecs already knew, that time is alive, sacred, and when understood, it can be shaped, guided, and even in its own mysterious woo. I manipulated. Sacred sexual alchemy of Tantra masters. In the hidden chambers of ancient India and Tibet, there existed a path of transformation so profound that it was often misunderstood, feared, or concealed from the uninitiated. This path was the sacred sexual alchemy of the Tantra masters, a discipline that saw sexuality not as mere pleasure, nor as sin, but as one of the most powerful forces for spiritual awakening. Where most traditions turned away from the body to seek the divine, Tantra turned inward, teaching that the body itself was a temple, and within its energy lay the key to transcendence. At the heart of Tantric sexual alchemy was the belief that sexual energy is life energy. It is the same force that creates a child, the same fire that drives creativity, vitality, and spiritual illumination. To the Tantra masters, this energy was sacred and should not be squandered but cultivated, refined, and transmuted into higher states of consciousness. Just as alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold, Tantric practitioners sought to transform raw desire into divine union. The practices were precise and intentional. Through breath control, meditation, visualization, and physical techniques, practitioners learned to circulate sexual energy through the body's subtle channels, awakening the kundalini, the serpent power coiled at the base of the spine. Instead of being released outward, this energy was drawn upward, igniting each chakra, cleansing blockages, and opening the gateway to expanded states of awareness. The act of union, whether with a partner or within oneself, became a sacred ritual of merging opposites, masculine and feminine, sun and moon, body and spirit. Contrary to modern misconceptions, Tantric alchemy was not about indulgence but about mastery. It was not hedonism, it was discipline. Practitioners often engaged in long periods of celibacy, building energy, and learning to control it before entering sacred union. When union occurred, it was not about release but retention, not about losing energy, but about multiplying it, transforming passion into illumination. To waste sexual energy was seen as losing the very fuel of spiritual ascent. The symbolism was rich and cosmic. The male and female were seen as reflections of universal forces, Shiva and Shakti, consciousness and energy, stillness and movement. In their sacred union, practitioners experienced not just physical ecstasy, but the dissolution of duality itself. They became the universe, embodying the truth that creation and destruction, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter, are not separate, but one eternal dance. The Tantra masters guarded these teachings carefully, for they knew their power could be misused. Only those with discipline, humility, and spiritual intention were permitted to learn the deeper practices. For the unprepared, sexual alchemy could lead to obsession or imbalance. For the prepared, it was liberation, the direct experience of divine consciousness within the body. Modern science gives us another perspective on these ancient practices. Studies of sexual energy, breath, and meditation show profound effects on the nervous system, hormones, and brain states. Controlled arousal without release increases focus and vitality. Circulating energy through breath enhances relaxation and creativity. Even the mystical states reported in Tantra mirror the neurological signatures of deep meditation and peak consciousness. What the Tantra masters described as union with the divine, science sees as the awakening of dormant human potential. Sacred sexual alchemy reminds us of a forgotten truth, that spirituality is not about rejecting the body, but embracing it, not about fleeing desire, but transforming it. It teaches that the same energy that fuels lust can fuel enlightenment, that within the most primal force lies the seed of transcendence. To walk this path is to reclaim power over one's deepest energy, to treat sexuality not as casual entertainment, but as sacred fire. It is to see union not merely as physical, but as spiritual, not merely as pleasure, but as prayer. And in that prayer, one discovers the secret the Tantra masters carried for millennia, that ecstasy and enlightenment are not opposites, but reflections of the same divine force. Celtic riddle language for psychological warfare. Among the Celtic druids and bards, language was more than communication. It was a weapon, a shield, and a sacred tool of power. They understood that words could heal or wound, inspire or confuse, and even control the minds of those who heard them. One of their most fascinating techniques was the use of riddle language, a way of speaking in layers of metaphor, mystery, and hidden meaning. To outsiders, it was poetry or nonsense. To initiates, it was encoded wisdom. And in times of conflict, it became a subtle form of psychological warfare. The Celts believed that truth was too sacred to be spoken plainly. Wisdom was to be concealed, wrapped in metaphor, and revealed only to those with the insight to decode it. Riddles served this purpose perfectly. They concealed knowledge in paradox, forcing the listener to think deeply, to question assumptions, and to step into a world where meaning was not given but discovered. To solve a riddle was not just a game, it was a rite of initiation, a demonstration of mental strength and spiritual readiness. In warfare, this became a powerful tool. Celtic warriors and druids would use riddles to unsettle enemies, to sow doubt, or to delay their decisions. By presenting questions with multiple meanings, they disrupted certainty, leaving opponents trapped in confusion. A well-crafted riddle was like a spell. It entered the mind, twisted logic, and left the listener questioning themselves long after the words were spoken. Against an enemy, this was as effective as any blade. Riddle language also strengthened the Celts themselves. In training, young initiates were constantly tested with riddles, forcing them to sharpen memory, intuition, and resilience under pressure. A warrior who could solve riddles quickly was seen as not only intelligent, but unshakable, able to hold clarity even in the face of trickery. This mental training mirrored the unpredictability of battle. Just as riddles forced one to adapt, so too did combat demand flexibility and quick wit. Spiritually, riddles carried even deeper significance. The Druids believed that the universe itself was a riddle, filled with mysteries that could not be grasped directly, but only hinted at through symbol and story. To speak in riddles was to mirror the divine, to honor the hidden nature of truth. In this sense, riddle language was not only psychological warfare, but spiritual alignment with the cosmos. The Celts also used riddles in negotiations and diplomacy. By speaking in veiled terms, they revealed only what they wished to reveal, keeping power in their hands. An opponent who misunderstood a riddle might act on false assumptions, while the Celt retained clarity. This layered communication was both art and strategy, a way of staying several steps ahead without ever lifting a weapon. Modern parallels exist in propaganda, coded language, and psychological manipulation. Politicians, leaders, and strategists often use ambiguous words to plant doubt, shift perception, or force people to interpret messages in multiple ways. The Celts, however, practiced this art with a poetic brilliance that elevated it beyond manipulation. It was a game of minds, where victory was not only in battle, but in thought itself. To study Celtic riddle language today is to rediscover the hidden power of words. It reminds us that speech is not neutral, but charged with energy. A word can confuse, empower, or enslave. A phrase can linger in the mind like a spell, reshaping thoughts long after it is spoken. The Celts knew this and wielded language as carefully as a sword. In the end, their riddle language teaches us a vital truth, that the sharpest battles are not always fought with weapons, but with ideas. The mind is the first battlefield, and words are its arrows. The Celts mastered this warfare not by shouting louder, but by speaking deeper, weaving riddles that unsettled enemies, trained allies, and revealed the hidden patterns of reality itself. Cave darkness retreats for supernatural awakening. For thousands of years, seekers of truth have ventured into caves, not for safety, not for shelter, but for transformation. These dark chambers, hidden beneath mountains and carved by time itself, became sacred spaces for those who wished to encounter something beyond the ordinary. Known as cave darkness retreats, these practices used complete isolation from light and sound to awaken states of consciousness so profound they were believed to grant visions, supernatural abilities, and direct encounters with the divine. Darkness has always held symbolic power. To many, it represents fear, the unknown, or death. But to initiates and mystics, darkness was a teacher. By retreating into caves for days, weeks, or even months, they stripped themselves of the external world, the sun, the stars, the distractions of life. In this absolute silence and blackness, the mind and spirit entered altered states, revealing dimensions of reality hidden from ordinary perception. Ancient traditions across the globe practiced darkness retreats. In Tibet, Buddhist monks would meditate in sealed caves for years, allowing the pineal gland to awaken and visions of luminous deities to emerge. In Mesoamerica, the Maya used cave ceremonies to commune with gods and ancestors, believing the underworld was not a place of death, but of transformation. In ancient Greece, seekers entered subterranean chambers as part of initiation rites, where darkness prepared them for spiritual rebirth. Physiologically, the effects of darkness are remarkable. Deprived of light, the brain resets its rhythms. The pineal gland, often called the seat of the soul, begins to release heightened levels of melatonin, followed by dimethyltryptamine, DMT, a natural compound linked to mystical experiences. In deep retreats, practitioners report visions of light, encounters with beings, GS, and journeys beyond the body, experiences often described as supernatural awakenings. The ancients did not need laboratories to know this. They learned it directly, through silence and surrender to the cave. But the cave was more than a tool for altered states. It was a symbolic womb. Entering the darkness was like returning to the source, dissolving identity and ego. The initiate faced fear, loneliness, and the confrontation with self. Many describe the first days as terrifying, the mind screaming for distraction. But once surrendered, the darkness revealed itself not as emptiness, but as fullness, a vast ocean of presence in which visions, insights, and spiritual truths arose naturally. Emerging from the cave was like being reborn into light, carrying wisdom that could never be gained in ordinary life. For shamans, darkness retreats were gateways to power. By entering the underworld of the cave, they connected with ancestral spirits, animal guides, and the forces of nature. For monks, they were paths to enlightenment, silencing every distraction until only pure awareness remained. For kings and leaders, they were trials of initiation, proving strength not through battle, but through stillness in the abyss. In modern times, interest in darkness retreats has returned. Spiritual centers now offer controlled versions of the ancient practice, where seekers spend days in sealed rooms without light. Many report heightened dreams, deep inner clarity, and visions similar to those described in mystical texts. Science is beginning to explore these effects, confirming what the ancients already knew. Darkness changes the brain, opens perception, and unlocks hidden capacities of the human spirit. Cave darkness retreats remind us that awakening does not always come from seeking more stimulation. Sometimes it comes from removing everything, the light, the noise, the distractions, until what remains is pure consciousness. It is in the void that we meet the infinite, in the silence that we hear truth, and in the darkness that we see the brightest visions. To enter the cave is to enter death of the old self. To emerge is to be reborn with new eyes. And in that rebirth lies the supernatural awakening the ancients promised, the discovery that within the deepest darkness lies the light of the eternal. Egyptian Ba and Ka, the science of soul travel. The ancient Egyptians believed that life was never confined to the body alone. To them, existence was layered, woven of visible flesh and invisible essence. At the core of this wisdom lay the Ba and the Ka, two aspects of the soul that explain not only the mystery of life and death, but also the possibility of soul travel, the ability to move beyond physical limits and enter higher dimensions of being. The ba was often depicted as a bird with a human head, symbolizing its power to leave the body and move freely through realms. It represented individuality, personality, and consciousness, the part of a person that could soar between the worlds of the living and the dead. The ka, by contrast, was the vital force, the double or energetic twin that gave life to the body. Without the ka, the body could not exist. Without the ba, the self could not recognize itself. Together, these two formed the eternal dance of human existence, bridging mortality and eternity. For the Egyptians, the ba and ka were not abstract concepts, but practical realities. Priests, shamans, and initiates trained to consciously separate these aspects of the soul through ritual and meditation. This separation was the foundation of soul travel, what we might now call astral projection. By allowing the ba to take flight while the ka remained rooted in the body, practitioners could explore hidden realms, communicate with deities, consult ancestors, and return with wisdom for their people. Temples served as laboratories for this science of the soul. Built with precise geometry, resonant acoustics, and sacred symbolism, they acted as gateways between dimensions. In these holy spaces, initiates practiced chants, breathwork, and guided trance rituals designed to loosen the ba from the physical body. Once freed, the ba could journey through celestial landscapes, visis, ting gods, stars, and the afterlife itself. These journeys were not dreams or fantasies. They were rehearsals for death, preparing the soul to navigate eternity with confidence and clarity. The famous Book of the Dead, more accurately titled The Book of Coming Forth by Day, was essentially a guidebook for the ba. It contained spells and instructions for traveling the afterlife, passing through gates guarded by spirits and reuniting with the ka. Only by this reunion could the soul become whole again and achieve immortality. Thus, soul travel was not just a mystical practice, it was a survival skill, ensuring that when death came, the soul would not wander lost, but ascend to eternal light. The Egyptians also used Baka science for power in life, not just after death. Pharaohs and priests trained in these arts were believed to consult their ba for guidance during dreams or trances, receiving visions about the future or solutions to political and spiritual challenges. In this way, soul travel was a source of authority, proof that the ruler was more than a mortal leader. He was a bridge between humanity and the divine. Modern perspectives give another layer of understanding. Today, countless people report experiences of leaving their body during dreams, meditation, or near-death states. These out-of-body experiences mirror exactly what the Egyptians described: floating above the body, traveling through other realms, meeting guides or ancestors, and returning with insight. Science often interprets these as neurological phenomena, but for spiritual seekers, they are evidence of what the Egyptians always knew. The soul is not confined to the flesh. The ba and ka also reflect psychological truths. The ka represents our primal energy, the life force that drives our body, instincts, and survival. The ba represents our higher awareness, the self that seeks meaning and transcendence. Soul travel, in this sense, is the harmonization of both, learning to balance survival with transcendence, body with spirit, earth with sky. To master this balance is to live fully, while preparing to die fearlessly. The science of soul travel was not just about escaping the body, but about remembering our eternal nature. By learning to separate and reunite ba and ka, the Egyptians sought proof that death was not an end, but a passage, a doorway into another form of life. They taught that within each of us lies the power to step beyond time and space, to explore worlds beyond the physical, and to return transformed. To embrace this teaching today is to awaken to the possibility that we are more than our bodies. The Egyptians invite us to see ourselves as travelers between realms, carrying within us both the grounding power of the Ka and the soaring freedom of the Ba. Together, they remind us that we are not bound by flesh, but are eternal beings, capable of leaving the earth yet always able to return, wiser and more whole.
Forbidden Mayan codices and time travel. The ancient Maya were not only builders of pyramids and masters of astronomy, they were keepers of time itself. Their understanding of cycles, calendars, and cosmic rhythms was so advanced that much of it remains a mystery to modern science. At the heart of this wisdom were the Mayan codices, books written on bark paper and painted with glyphs that contain knowledge of the heavens, rituals, and prophecies. Many of these codices were destroyed during the Spanish conquest, burned by missionaries who feared their power. Yet legends persist that some of the forbidden codices contain secrets of time travel, methods of moving through cycles to glimpse the past and future. The Maya saw time not as linear, but as cyclical, unfolding in repeating patterns. They tracked these cycles with extraordinary precision, using calendars such as the Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred calendar, and the Long Count, which mapped cosmic ages spanning thousands of years. Unlike the Western view of time as a straight line moving from past to future, the Maya saw it as a spiral, events repeating in different forms, with the possibility of predicting what was to come by studying what had already occurred. It is believed that the forbidden codices contained the deeper applications of this knowledge. To the Maya, time was alive, infused with energy. Each day carried a unique vibration shaped by planetary alignments, divine forces, and cosmic order. By aligning themselves with these energies through ritual, fasting, and meditation, Maya priests and shamans claimed they could shift their consciousness into different points along the spiral of time. In this sense, time travel was not about machines, but about consciousness, using sacred knowledge to move awareness beyond the present moment. Surviving codices, like the Dresden Codex, reveal fragments of this wisdom. Hay contain complex astronomical tables, eclipses, Venus cycles, and prophecies extending far into the future. But the missing codices, those hidden or destroyed, are said to have gone further, describing techniques of trance, vision quests, and ritual timing that allowed initiates to project themselves into other ages. Some accounts suggest that shamans could witness the deeds of ancestors or glimpse events yet to unfold, returning with warnings or guidance for their people. To modern eyes, this may seem like myth, yet science increasingly validates the Maya's mastery of cycles. Their calendar aligns with planetary rhythms, solar patterns, and even galactic movements. Neuroscience shows that altered states of consciousness, induced by meditation, fasting, or entheogenic plants, can dramatically alter perception of time. What the Maya recorded as soul journeys through ages may reflect a profound understanding of consciousness as a vehicle capable of bending the ordinary limits of time. The idea of time travel through cycles also reshapes how we think of destiny. If time is spiral, not linear, then the past and future are not separate. They echo each other. To study one is to glimpse the other. The Maya understood that by observing cycles of nature, stars, and human behavior, they could predict future patterns. This predictive power, encoded in the codices, would have given them immense influence, guiding rulers and shaping empires. The tragedy is that much of this knowledge was lost in flames. In 1562, Bishop Diego de Landa ordered thousands of codices burned, calling them works of the devil. With them vanished centuries of accumulated wisdom. Yet fragments survive, and whispers remain that hidden codices were smuggled away, kept in secret by Maya descendants, or hidden in underground chambers. If ever revealed, they may show not only astronomy and prophecy, but the true extent of the Maya's mastery over time. The forbidden Mayan codices remind us of a truth both humbling and powerful. Time is not a prison, but a mystery, one that can be explored, shaped, and even transcended. To the Maya, time travel was not science fiction, but sacred practice, a union of mind,
spirit, and cosmos. And though much of their wisdom was silenced, its echoes remain, waiting for us to listen, to remember, and perhaps to rediscover the lost art of moving through the spirals of time. Philosopher's Stone. Alchemical transmutation of the self. Among all the legends of alchemy, none is more famous, or more misunderstood, than the Philosopher's Stone. Popular imagination paints it as a magical object capable of turning lead into gold, granting immortality and bestowing limitless power. But to the true adepts, the Philosopher's Stone was never just a material substance. It was a symbol, a key to the deepest mystery of all, the transmutation of the self. Alchemists worked with fire, metals, and hidden formulas, but their true work was inner. The lead they sought to transform was not only the dull metal in their crucibles, but the base elements of human nature: fear, ignorance, desire, and ego. The gold they sought was not only the shining treasure of kings, but the awakened spirit, purified and illuminated. The Philosopher's Stone, therefore, was the ultimate goal of spiritual alchemy, the discovery of the eternal essence within, hidden beneath the impurities of the mortal self. The process of creating the stone was described in cryptic symbols: the blackening, nigredo, where the ego dies and the old self dissolves; the whitening, albedo, where clarity and purification begin; the reddening, rubedo, where spirit and matter are united into a higher form. These stages were not merely chemical but psychological, mapping the transformation of consciousness. Every trial, every burning of the false, brought the seeker closer to the radiant truth, the gold within the soul. Legends said that the Philosopher's Stone could grant immortality. In one sense, this was literal, as alchemists sought an elixir of life. But in a deeper sense, immortality meant awakening to the eternal nature of consciousness, realizing that the true self is not bound by birth and death. By transmuting the mortal self into the divine, the alchemist discovered a life beyond decay, a spirit unti, ouchable by time. The Philosopher's Stone also symbolized integration. It was the union of opposites, sun and moon, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter. To create the stone was to reconcile all dualities within oneself, to realize that nothing is separate but everything is part of one great whole. In this union, the alchemist achieved wholeness, becoming not fractured and divided but complete. Even science echoes this symbolism. Transformation is at the heart of nature. Stars transmute hydrogen into heavier elements, giving birth to the matter that forms our bodies. Cells constantly renew, death and life flowing together in endless cycles. Just as alchemists saw gold hidden in lead, science reveals that energy is hidden within matter, waiting to be released. The alchemists may not have held the secret of physical gold, but they glimpsed the truth that everything contains hidden potential, waiting for transformation. On a personal level, the Philosopher's Stone calls us to face our own lead, the parts of ourselves that feel heavy, impure, or unworthy. These are not to be rejected, but transformed. Through discipline, reflection, and inner work, we refine our rough matter into clarity, compassion, and strength. Every failure becomes fuel for wisdom. Every wound becomes a doorway to healing. Slowly the stone takes shape within us, not as an object we hold, but as the being we become. In the end, the Philosopher's Stone is not found in laboratories or hidden vaults. It is forged within the furnace of the human spirit. It is the reminder that transformation is always possible, that what seems heavy can become radiant, that what seems mortal can touch eternity. To seek the stone is to seek the highest truth, that we are not bound by the lead of our limitations, but destined to become the gold of our true selves.